Alright, what is up, everybody? We are back with another edition of Everyday Hoops. Hope you guys are having a good one. Today, we're doing something different. We're in basically the dead point of the NBA offseason right now. I decided what would maybe make things a fun video for me to do while we're waiting for anything really to happen. And I decided to do a 2000 NBA playoff deep dive. Now, I did something very similar to this last offseason where I did the Remember When series. That's still a place on my channel. You can go back and watch if you want. I just did, looking back at some random teams in NBA history that weren't historic, didn't do anything crazy, but just were fun or had something unique about them, And I decided this offseason to go bigger and do better. So we are going back and doing a deep dive and looking at the 2000 NBA playoffs, trying to go in depth here and just try to get a good gauge of what the NBA, what the playoffs, what everything was like back in the league at that point in time. So this could serve as a good, kind of balance for people that didn't watch that NBA in that era, me, or if you did watch that era, you can go back and kind of relive these moments in history. This took a very long time to make, to research, to script out, and all that stuff. So I'm really happy to finally be able to show the video and finally finish this video here today. Thank you guys for the views on the videos and the shorts recently. I really appreciate it. If you do like the content around here, consider subscribing, turn on notifications, do all the stuff like that. I really appreciate it. It really helps out a lot. Join the membership if you want to learn more about the membership. There's a video on my channel explaining all of it. You can go back and watch that. Link to my Twitters and all that stuff, description down below. And I'm excited. Let's get to it. The 2000 NBA playoffs deep dive. The 2000 NBA playoffs were the postseason of the 1999-2000 season, the 54th in NBA history. The 21st century was upon us, and with that, will mark a new era of basketball and a new champion would be crowned. Before we start the actual playoffs, let's take a quick look at the teams that would be participating. The Indiana Pacers. The Pacers were in the midst of their best years since being in the NBA. They made it to the conference finals in 4 of the last 6 seasons, yet lost all of them. The Pacers are coming into the 2000 season with high expectations of winning the Eastern Conference and making their first NBA Finals appearance. The Pacers finished the season with a 56-26 record, the best in the East, and the first time in franchise history they were a number 1 seed. Led by head coach Hall of Famer Larry Bird, the Pacers were the best offense in basketball, with the number 1 offensive rating, while also holding a solid 13th defensive rating and 6th in net rating. Their team leading scorer was, surprisingly, Jalen Rose. In his first full year as a starter, he averaged 18.2 points per game with almost 5 rebounds and 4 assists, leading him to winning Most Improved Player. Franchise legend Reggie Miller, at 34 years old, still was really good, averaging 18 points per game on 40% three-point shooting and made his 5th All-Star game. Big man Rick Smits averaged almost 13 points with 5 rebounds and over 1 block. 24-year-old forward Austin Crocier averaged 10 points and 6 rebounds. And 30-year-old big Dale Davis averaged a near double-double with 10 points and 9.9 rebounds, adding 1 block, and made his first All-Star game. The Pacers, now as the number 1 seed in the East, were finally ready to get farther than they had before and be the ones to hold the final trophy. The Miami Heat. The Heat were becoming one of the more consistently good franchises in the league at this point, after not doing much in the late 80s and early 90s. Now they had a great coach, good players, and were becoming a consistent winning team. The Heat finished 2000 with a 52-30 record, finishing second in the East and making their 5th straight playoff appearance. Led by Hall of Famer Pat Riley, the Heat were only the 17th best offense, but really made themselves on the other end, being the number 7 defense and were 7th in net rating. They were led by star center Alonzo Mourning. At 29, he had a great season, averaging over 21.5 points per game with 9.5 rebounds, and led the league with 3.7 blocks per game en route to winning his 2nd straight Defensive Player of the Year. He also made All-NBA for the 2nd year in a row as he was on the 2nd team, while obviously making All-Defensive First Team for the 2nd straight year and made his 5th All-Star game. They also had Jamal Mashburn, who averaged 17 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. Former All-Star Tim Hardaway was also on the team, who, despite being 33 years old and missing a lot of the season due to injury, still gave you 13 points and 7 assists. They also had forward Vashawn Leonard average 12 points per game on 39% three-point shooting off the bench, but he wouldn't be able to play in the playoffs due to a season-ending injury. The Miami Heat, now near the top of the East, were coming into the playoffs with higher expectations of at least making it past the first round for only the 2nd time ever. The New York Knicks. The Knicks were coming off of a magical playoff run in 1999, making it all the way to the finals as an 8 seed before losing to the Spurs. They were coming into the 2000 season looking to prove that last year's finals run wasn't a fluke. They finished the season with a 50-32 record, finishing third in the East and making the playoffs for the 13th straight year. Led by East All-Star head coach Jeff Van Gundy, offense was not their strong suit at number 21 on the season. But they were a tough, gritty team, finishing as a number 6 defense and 11th in net rating. Their leading man was Allen Houston. The 28-year-old guard broke out to have his best season in the league, as he averaged almost 20 points per game on 48, 43, 83 shooting splits and made his first All-Star game. They also had forward Latrell Sprewell, who averaged 18 points per game, still holding on to franchise legend Patrick Ewing. Despite being 37 years old in his 15th season, he still averaged 15 points, almost 10 rebounds, and almost 1.5 blocks per game. Also having 30-year-old former All-Star Larry Johnson, who averaged 10 points and 5 rebounds, and 25-year-old big Marcus Camby averaged 10 points, almost 8 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game. The Knicks were coming into these playoffs looking not only to make it back to the finals, but finally conquer an NBA championship that they've been looking for almost 30 years. The Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets are coming off missing the playoffs in 1999 after making consecutive playoff appearances for the first time in franchise history. Now, with the full season with their new coach and a good overall team, they were ready to come back to success. They finished the season with a 49-33 record, finishing fourth in the East and making a playoff return after missing the previous season. Led by Paul Silas, now in his first full season as head coach, the Hornets were only the number 18 offense, but held the number 8 defense, and were ninth in net rating. Their leader was 28-year-old Eddie Jones. Jones, in his first full season as a Hornet, had a career year. He averaged 20 points per game with almost 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and led the league with 2.7 steals per game. He was awarded with an All-NBA third-team appearance, while making his third All-Defensive second team and his third All-Star game. The Hornets also carried a good overall lineup, having big man Derek Coleman, who averaged 16 points, 8.5 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks, guard David Wesley, who put up 13 points with 5 assists, big man Eldon Campbell, who averaged 12 points, 7 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks, and the return of Anthony Mason, who missed the entire season before, who averaged over 11.5 points with 8.5 rebounds and 4.5 assists. The Hornets were back and ready to do some damage in these playoffs with this very solid team. The Philadelphia 76ers. The 76ers were in the midst of a return to winning. After finding very little success in the 90s after the Julius Erving and Charles Barkley era, they have found a new head coach, a new franchise player, and now ready to give 76er fans something to cheer for again. They finished 2000 with a 49-33 record, finishing 5th in the East and making their second straight playoff appearance. They finished this season with their best record in 10 years, since winning 53 games in 1990. Led by coach Larry Brown, offense was not their best attribute, being the number 25 offense in the league. But they excelled on the other end, holding the number 4 defense and were 13th in net rating. Allen Iverson was the franchise for Philly, and at 24 years old, he was reaching new heights. He averaged almost 28.5 points per game with almost 5 assists and 2 steals. He made All-NBA second team, his second All-NBA appearance, and finally made his All-Star debut. The team also had 31-year-old former champion Tony Kukoc, who they acquired at the trade deadline and averaged 12, 4, and 4. They also had Tyrone Hill, who averaged 12 points and 9 rebounds, and Theo Ratliff averaged almost 12 points with 7 rebounds and 3 blocks per game. The 76ers were coming into these playoffs now ready to lock people down and have their star be ready to take them home. The Toronto Raptors. The Raptors are coming into their 5th season of existence and at this point had understandably not seen any much success. But with an offseason bringing in good vets, some young players taking strides, and a new star emerging for them, 2000 was the year that the Raptors would put the NBA world on notice. They finished the season with a 45-37 record, good enough for 6th in the East. This would be the Raptors' best season in franchise history by far, demolishing their old high of 30 wins in 1997. This will also be their first playoff appearance in team history. Led by coach Butch Carter, the team statistically didn't look like it excelled at one thing. They were the number 15 offense and number 17 defense while being 17th in that rating. The biggest part of the Raptors' historic year was the rise of the reigning Rookie of the Year, Vince Carter. In his second season, Carter leaped into stardom. He averaged over 25.5 points per game with almost 6 rebounds, almost 4 assists, and a steal and a block. He made All-NBA third team and his All-Star debut, becoming one of the most electric players in the game. It wasn't just Carter that made this team not only good, but entertaining. His cousin wasn't bad either, a 20-year-old named Tracy McGrady. He averaged 15 points per game with 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and almost 2 blocks. They also had vet wing Doug Christie, who averaged 12, 4, and 4, and Antonio Davis, who averaged 11.5 points and almost 9 rebounds. The Raptors are finally in the postseason and looking to show everyone that they were here for real. The Detroit Pistons. The Pistons were in the middle of an era change. With all of the team from the Bad Boys era now gone, they were looking to find their new identity. They finished 2000 with a 42-40 record, finishing 7th in the East and making their second straight playoff appearance. The season consisted of Alvin Gentry for the first 58 games with a 28-30 record. He was fired and replaced by assistant George Irvine, who went 14-10 to end the season. This team was unlike most of the other playoff teams in the East, as they were a team that can consistently score, holding the number 4 offense, but they also had the number 21 defense and were 12th in net rating. They're led by a great 1-2 punch. Their number 1 was Grant Hill. Hill averaged almost 26 points per game with 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and almost 1.5 steals, while making All-NBA second team, his 5th All-NBA appearance, and his 5th All-Star game. His partner in crime was 25-year-old Jerry Stackhouse. Stackhouse broke out in 2000, averaging over 23.5 points per game with almost 4 rebounds and 4.5 assists, en route to making his first All-Star game. They also had some solid players around them. Guard Lindsey Hunter averaged 12 points per game, and Christian Laettner averaged 12 points and 6 rebounds. While this Pistons team maybe wasn't the deepest or best defensively, they had an all-star duo that could take over the game whenever they needed to. The Milwaukee Bucks. Similar to a few other East playoff teams, the Bucks are finally starting to see success for themselves. After being a constant playoff team in the 80s, the 90s weren't so kind to them. But after a coaching change and some emerging star players, the Bucks are ready to compete this year. They finished 2000 with a 42-40 record, making the 8th seed in the East. It would be their second straight playoff appearance and best record since 1991 when they won 48 games. Led by coach George Karl, the Bucks are one of the more exciting teams in the league, finishing with the number 2 offense in basketball. But couldn't say the same on the other end. Also holding the number 26 defense and were 16th in net rating. Like the Pistons, Milwaukee also had a nice 1-2 punch. Their leader was Ray Allen. At 24 years old, Allen took a jump into stardom, averaging 22 points per game with 4 rebounds and almost 4 assists on 45, 42, 88 shooting splits and made his All-Star debut. His number 2 was Glenn Robinson. The former number 1 pick had a good season, averaging almost 21 points per game with 6 rebounds and also made his first All-Star game. They also had some help with 30-year-old Sam Cassell, who gave them 18 points and 9 assists, and 22-year-old Tim Thomas, who averaged 11. The Bucks, despite being the final team to get in, had a team that will absolutely not be dealt with that easily. The Los Angeles Lakers. At this point, the Lakers had gotten back to dominance, being one of the best teams in the league for the past few years. But they had not gotten past the conference finals since 1991, and they thought they were ready to take the next step. But a new coaching hire and acquiring some playoff vets, the Lakers are ready to take that step and take over the league. The Lakers had an amazing season, finishing with a 67-15 record, the best in the NBA by 8 games. This was their second best record in franchise history, only behind the 1972 team that won 69 games. Their biggest move came in hiring legendary head coach Phil Jackson, who completely changed his team and brought it to another level of dominance. The team finished with the number 5 offense, the number 1 defense, and obviously number 1 in net rating. Shaquille O'Neal had a phenomenal season, establishing himself as the best in the league. He led the league in scoring, averaging 29.7 points per game, along with 13.6 rebounds, 3 blocks, and led the league shooting 57% from the field, and awarded with the MVP. He also made All-NBA first team, his 7th All-NBA appearance, All-Defensive second team, and his 7th All-Star game. Alongside him was 22-year-old Kobe Bryant, who had a breakout season, averaging 22.5 points, 6 rebounds, almost 5 assists, and over 1.5 steals per game, making his second appearance on the All-NBA team on the second team, his first All-Defensive team, and his second All-Star game. They also had 32-year-old former All-Star Glenn Rice, who averaged almost 16 points per game. The Lakers, being the unanimous best team in the league, were ready to be the best team in the playoffs and win a championship for the first time in 12 years. The Utah Jazz. The Jazz are coming into this season just 2 years removed from back-to-back tough finals losses, and with their 2 stars not getting any younger, the expectation was clear that they did not have many more shots left at an NBA title. The Jazz finished the season with a 55-27 record, finishing second in the West and made their 17th straight playoff appearance. Led by Jerry Sloan, the team finished with the number 6 offense, number 11 defense, and 5th in net rating. They were still led by Karl Malone, who at 36 still averaged 25.5 points with 9.5 rebounds, making All-NBA second team for his 13th All-NBA appearance and his 12th All-Star game. Meanwhile, 37-year-old John Stockton averaged 12 points with over 8.5 assists and made his 10th All-Star game. Along with them was Brian Russell, who averaged 14 points, and the 36-year-old Jeff Hornacek, who averaged 12 points per game and led the league with 47% shooting from 3. The Jazz knew the objective: get back to the finals and finally get that ring they've been chasing. The Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers have been one of the more consistently good teams in the NBA. They hadn't missed the playoffs since the early 80s, had many great players, and were a very respected team. But with that, The only thing they were missing was a championship, something they haven't achieved in almost 25 years. After being in the conference finals the year before, they decided it was time to strike, having a big offseason and hoping this could put them back near the top. And it did. Portland finished 2000 with a 59-23 record, their second best record in franchise history, only behind the 1991 team that won 63 games. They held the number 3 seed in the West and clinched the playoffs for the 18th straight year. Led by Mike Dunleavy, they finished as the number 3 offense, number 5 defense, and were second in net rating. They have built a great squad, led by Rasheed Wallace, who averaged 16 points with 7 rebounds, a steal, and a block, en route to his first All-Star appearance. The offseason pickups really shined as well, one of them being 30-year-old former All-Star Steve Smith, who averaged 15 points per game, and former All-NBA talent and 6-time champion Scottie Pippen, who at 34 still averaged 12.5 points with 6 rebounds, 5 assists, and made All-Defensive Second Team, his 10th appearance on the team. Along with Damon Stoudemire, who averaged 12.5 points and 5 assists, and Arvydas Sabonis, who put up almost 12 points, almost 8 rebounds, and a block per game, this team was loaded and ready to finally capture that championship they've been waiting for. Also want to mention really quick, so you might have noticed in the last two teams, the Blazers were third seed at 59 wins, but the Jazz were the second seed at 55 wins. Well, how does that make sense? Well, back at this point in the NBA, seeding was a little bit different. You see, divisions actually mattered at this point. There were two divisions in each conference. In the West, you had the Midwest and the Pacific Division. Well, if you won your division, you automatically finish as a top 2 seed in the West despite your record. So the Jazz finished number 1 in their division, the Midwest, with 55 wins. The Blazers, even though had more wins, they were also in the same division as the Lakers, who were the best team in the league and won 67 games. Therefore, Portland didn't win the division. Therefore, the Jazz got priority over the Blazers. So that's why the Jazz were second at 55 wins, while the Blazers were third at 59 wins. Just wanted to clear that up real quick. Now we'll go to the next team. The San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs are coming off an amazing season in 1999 as they captured the first championship in franchise history. With a rising star head coach, a dominant duo, and some good vets around them, the goal was to repeat, and now they were going to be the hunted in the NBA. The Spurs finished 2000 with a 53-29 record, finishing fourth in the West, and would make their third straight playoff appearance. Led by Greg Popovich, they were the number 12 offense, number 4 defense, and third in net rating. They're led by 23-year-old Tim Duncan, who continued his excellent start to his career by averaging 23 points, 14 rebounds, 2 blocks, made his third All-NBA first team, All-Defensive first team for the second year, third overall, and his second All-Star game. With him was his big man buddy, David Robinson. Even though he was 34, he still could ball, averaging just under 18 points per game, 9 rebounds, and over 2 blocks, as he made All-NBA third team for his 9th All-NBA selection and his 9th All-Star game. Along with having 34-year-old Avery Johnson, who averaged 11 points with 6 assists, the objective for the Spurs was simple: repeat and start building a new dynasty for the league. Only one problem presented itself. In the 78th game of the season, Tim Duncan would suffer a meniscus injury in his knee and would unfortunately have to miss some time. Would he be back in time for the Spurs' repeat quest? We would have to wait and see. The Phoenix Suns. The Suns had a very similar fate to a few other teams in the West. A consistent playoff team for the past decade with great players and great records, but could never get over that hump of being crowned champions. At this point, Phoenix was on a 4-year streak of first-round exits, and after making some moves in the offseason, hoped that this was the year to break that. The Suns finished the year with a 53-29 record, finishing 5th in the West and making their 12th straight playoff appearance. This was a very interesting season for the Suns in many ways. One of the ways being head coach Danny Ainge resigning from the job just 20 games into the season with a 13-7 record. Scott Skiles would take over and go 40-22 the rest of the way. They're only the number 16 offense, but held their hats on the other end, holding the number 3 defense and were 4th in net rating. The leading scorer of this team was, you guessed it, Clifford Robinson. The 33-year-old had a surprising resurgent season after being an all-star and 6-man winner in Portland. He averaged 18.5 points with 4.5 rebounds and was awarded with an all-defensive second-team appearance. Their biggest offseason acquisition came in former all-star Penny Hardaway, who at 28 averaged 17, 5, and 5. But their leader was 26-year-old Jason Kidd. He would average 14 points, 7 rebounds, lead the league with 10.1 assists, and have 2 steals per game, leading to his second All-NBA first team, all-defensive second team, and third all-star game. Another offseason pickup was 28-year-old Rodney Rogers, who will go on to average 13 points and 5 rebounds, winning 6th Man of the Year. Their final big offseason contributor was a 21-year-old rookie named Sean Marion, who will put up 10 points per game with 6.5 rebounds, 1 block, and make all-rookie second team. This Suns team was loaded up and now ready to finally win some playoff series again. But injury would hit them as well. Their star, Jason Kidd, would suffer an ankle injury and miss the last month of the season. But an unexpected twist appeared. Former All-NBA player and All-Star point guard Kevin Johnson, who played 11 seasons with Phoenix and had retired 2 years earlier, would return and play the final month in playoffs for the Suns, hoping to help this team make one more long playoff run before he goes. Would this be enough to help and Jason Kidd return for the postseason? We'll have to see. The Minnesota Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are finally building a winning franchise. After seeing no success for their first 6 years of existence, they made the right picks, got the right surrounding pieces, the right head coach, and all of a sudden, the Wolves were a fun, young team with a bright future. And that future would take a huge leap this year. They finished 2000 with a 50-32 record, the first 50-win season in franchise history, good enough for sixth in the West and making their fourth straight playoff appearance. Head coach Flip Saunders had this team holding the number 8 defense, number 12 defense, and 10th in net rating. The star of this team was Kevin Garnett, and the 23-year-old was turning into a superstar. He averaged almost 23 points per game with just under 12 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1.6 blocks per game, making All-NBA first team, his second All-NBA appearance, All-Defensive first team for the first time, and his third All-Star game. They also have some solid players around him, having 29-year-old Terrell Brandon, who averaged 17 points, almost 9 assists, and almost 2 steals, along with Malik Sealy, who averaged 11 points per game. They also traded to draft 22-year-old Wally Zerbiak, who averaged over 11.5 points and made All-Rookie first team. The Wolves felt like they had the star and the team to finally make it out of the first round. The Seattle Supersonics. The Supersonics were in the midst of an era change. After having some amazing seasons in the 90s, they were never awarded with a championship. And now with their head coach and most of the team gone from those years, there was an adjustment period as they missed the playoffs in 1999. Now, after some offseason additions, they were ready to fight back. The Sonics finished 2000 with a 45-37 record, finishing 7th in the West and making it back to the playoffs after missing the year before. Led by coach Paul Westphal, they held the number 9 offense, number 15 defense, and 14th in net rating. The franchise was still led by Gary Payton, who was the last player remaining from the mid-90s teams. Payton had arguably his best season this year, averaging 24 points per game with 6.5 rebounds, almost 9 assists, and almost 2 steals per game, making All-NBA first team for his 7th All-NBA appearance, also making All-Defensive first team for the 7th time and his 6th All-Star game. They also had Vin Baker, who averaged 16 points and 7 rebounds. Their offseason pickups were big as well, with Brent Barry averaging 11 points, Ruben Patterson, who averaged 11 points and 5 rebounds, and 34-year-old former champ Vernon Maxwell, who averaged almost 11 points. The Sonics had a tough team, and despite their low seeding, were not going out that easily. The Sacramento Kings. After being near the bottom of the league and having not much winning success for most of the 80s and 90s, the Kings were finally building something. Bringing in a new head coach and some good players, the Kings are on their way back. They finished 2000 with a 44-38 record, finishing 8th in the West and making their second straight playoff appearance, their first time making consecutive playoff appearances since 1980-81. 44 wins was also their best record in 17 years, since winning 45 games in 1983. Head coach Rick Adelman led the team to the number 11 offense, number 10 defense, and 8th in net rating. Their leader was Chris Webber, who was slowly becoming a star in Sacramento. He averaged 24.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, over 4.5 assists, 1.6 steals, and 1.7 blocks, making All-NBA third team for a second All-NBA appearance and his second All-Star game. Alongside him was 24-year-old Jason Williams, who averaged 12 points and 7 assists, Vlade Divac averaging 12 points, 8 rebounds, a steal and a block, 22-year-old Peja Stojakovic, who averaged almost 12 points per game, Nick Anderson, and Corliss Williamson, who both averaged 10 points. The Kings were back, and with this good team, ready to prove people wrong. Those are all the teams we are going to see in the 2000 NBA playoffs, and now let's finally get to the meat and potatoes of it, deep diving into the 2000 NBA playoffs. Pacers versus Bucks. Also, before we really dive into the playoff series, I just want to say something real quick before we jump into these playoffs about the entirety of the playoffs at this point. See, nowadays in the NBA, every series is best of 7 with the format that we see now. But back in 2000, things were a little different. At this point, almost every series was a 7-game series, except for the first round. Back at this point in the NBA, the first round was a best of 5-game series instead of entirety being 7. After this, every series is 7, but at this point, every first round series is a best of 5. So once, if I say team on the verge of elimination, even though they only lost 2 games, or winner go home game 5, it makes sense instead of being like, what the heck, game 5? What are you talking about? So first round series, game 5 series. After everything else will be best of 7. So just wanted to explain that real quick. Now let's really dive into it. The 1-seeded Pacers and the 8-seed Bucks start our playoff journey, with the Pacers looking for a long run and the Bucks looking for their first series win since 1989. This is going to be a battle, and presumably a high scoring one, with the two best offenses in the league going head to head. This had the feeling of not typical of a 1-8 matchup. In game one, the home team Pacers got off to a good start. Led by Jalen Rose, who scored 12 in the first, they got out to a 22-9 lead early. The Bucks would start to settle in and cut the lead to 28-18 after one. The second quarter started as a slugfest, as the teams combined for just 6 points in the first 5 minutes of the quarter. They both would finally get going late, as Glenn Robinson and Dale Davis each had 8 points in the quarter for their respective teams, and Indiana would lead 45-34 at halftime. Indiana kept that lead up in the third, having a 58-48 lead at the 4:52 mark. But the Bucks, led by Ray Allen and Sam Cassell, would go on a 14-4 run to end the third with a tie game at 62. The Bucks would use this momentum to take a 69-68 lead with 7 minutes left in the game. Then Jalen Rose would start to heat up, hitting 3 threes in a stretch that helped Indiana take an 8-point lead back. This game would come down to the final few minutes, with the hero being backup point guard Travis Best for the Pacers. Best would hit back-to-back jumpers to give Indiana an 87-84 lead with 47 seconds left. Sam Cassell would get fouled on the next possession and go 1 for 2 from the line to cut the lead to 2. Reggie Miller missed a jumper, but the Pacers would get fouled and Jalen Rose would go to the free throw line to potentially ice the game. Rose would go 1 for 2 as well, giving Indiana just a 3-point lead with the Bucks having 16 seconds left to potentially tie it. The Bucks gave the ball to their star, Ray Allen, in the situation, where he would end up getting blocked by Best. Tim Thomas get one more crack at a 3, but it would be no good, and Indiana holds on to win game 1, 88-85. Jalen Rose would come up huge in the game, leading with 26 points, scoring 24 of those points in the first and fourth quarter. Miller would finish with 21 3-3 with 3 steals and 2 blocks, contributing despite a tough 5 for 18 shooting performance. Dale Davis would have 12 points, 17 rebounds, and 4 blocks, and Rick Smits had 12 and 5. Ray Allen led the Bucks with 26 points as well, while Sam Cassell had 18 and 6, and Tim Thomas had 11. The Bucks' other All-Star, Glenn Robinson, were struggling in this game, with just 11 points on 4 for 17 shooting. The Pacers led 1-0. Game 2 started out with the Bucks having a 12-10 lead in the first 5.5 minutes, but they would then kick the offense into high gear, outscoring the Pacers 23-9 for the rest of the first to have a 35-19 lead. The bench would be a big contributor for the Bucks, as they would help them close that quarter and start the second as well, starting on a 12-6 run to take a 22-point lead. Indiana struggled to find a rhythm in this game, shooting just 33% from the field in the first half as the Bucks led 61-38 at halftime. Milwaukee would not take their foot off the gas, starting the third on a 12-5 run to take a 30-point lead and eventually blow the Pacers out, winning Game 2 104-91. The Bucks would end up shooting 53% from the field, while holding Indiana to 38%. They also dominated the assist battle, doubling up the Pacers 24-12 in that category. The Bucks had 6 players scoring double figures, with Allen and Cassell at the forefront, each with 20. The bench was a huge deciding factor in this game, as 3 of those 6 double-figure scorers came from the bench, with Tim Thomas having 19, Scott Williams having 15, and Vinny Del Negro had 10. Glenn Robinson will also have another 11-point game. For Indiana, they cannot get their best players going, as the leading scorers also came off the bench. Austin Crocier led the team with 16, while Travis Best had 14. Jalen Rose finished with just 11, and Reggie Miller would struggle to shoot again, shooting 4 for 12 and having 10. The Bucks' big win now tied the series at 1, heading back to Milwaukee. In Game 3, Indiana had to make some adjustments, not only after getting dominated, but with their starting lineup. During Game 2, starting center Rick Smits gave an elbow to Bucks center Irvin Johnson, which he was ejected for. After the game, the NBA reviewed the footage and decided to give Smits a $10,000 fine and suspend him for Game 3. Indiana would now have to navigate without their starting center, and threw their leading scorer from last game, Austin Crocier, into the lineup. One thing was clear from both teams at the start of this game. They both needed to get their all-stars going. Reggie Miller scored 8 in the first, while Glenn Robinson had 12, more than he scored in both Game 1 and Game 2. The Bucks would lead 26-23 after 1. This was a very close game, as it was tied 41-41 with 5 minutes left in the first half. But the Bucks would take control, going on a 17-10 run to enter the half with a 58-51 lead. They would continue to start the third as well, going on a 13-8 run to lead 71-59. But then, Reggie Miller would finally find a stroke at the right time. Miller would score 12 straight points for Indiana, which sparked a 22-8 run and gave them the lead back at the end of the third, 81-78. With the Pacers holding on to a slight lead 4 minutes into the quarter, the Bucks ran into a wall. After Tim Thomas made a jumper at the 8:01 mark in the fourth, the Bucks would go scoreless for the next 4 minutes and 22 seconds, with the Pacers taking a 96-87 lead. Milwaukee would not be able to overcome this, and the Pacers would win Game 3, 109-96. The Pacers would find their offensive rhythm in this game, shooting almost 41% from 3 and 94% from the free throw line. Milwaukee shot just 18% from 3 and 68% from the line. Reggie Miller would finally get it going, leading the game with 34 points, shooting 13 for 27. Jalen Rose also have a nice game with 27 points. Backup point guard Travis Best will have another impactful game off the bench, scoring 18 points with 11 of them coming in the fourth. And Austin Crocier, who replaced Smith as a starter, would have a 10-point, 11-rebound double-double. For the Bucks, Allen and Robinson both had 26, while Sam Cassell had 13 points and 12 assists, and Tim Thomas had 12. But that drought in the fourth quarter was a deciding factor this game. The Pacers now led 2-1. Game 4 started off with the Pacers having an early 12-8 lead. But Milwaukee on the verge of elimination, their desperation showed as they exploded with a 25-9 run to end the first with a 33-22 lead. Similar to Game 2, the bench for the Bucks would be a huge factor as they helped a 17-4 run to start the second and take a 50-25 lead. Milwaukee would continue this dominance the rest of the way, leading 64-37 at halftime and eventually winning the game 100-87, keeping their season alive. The Bucks will hold the Pacers to shooting 0 for 13 from 3 and also dominate the assist battle 31-14. Ray Allen had another 20 points, with the bench really shining, as Scott Williams would have 20 points and 8 rebounds, and Tim Thomas had 17. Glenn Robinson also had 18 with 5 assists and 4 steals, and Sam Cassell had 13 assists. For Indiana, Rose had 17, Miller had 15, and Dale Davis had 12 and 10, but they wouldn't get much help from anybody else. The series is now tied at 2, and a winner-go-home Game 5 1-8 matchup would take place in Indiana. Game 5 would be an amazing game, with the game knotted up for the entirety of it and nobody holding a double-digit lead at any point. Reggie Miller was phenomenal in the game, hitting any shot needed for Indiana, but Milwaukee would always respond to their own and never go away. Fast forwarding to the last few possessions. Reggie would hit a three-pointer to give Indiana the lead back at 93-92, capping off a run of him scoring the last 11 points for Indiana. Ray Allen would miss a close shot on the other end, but Miller would turn the ball over, which resulted in Tim Thomas scoring to give Milwaukee back the lead. The Pacers would get multiple chances on the following possession, with Travis Best missing a layup and Dale Davis missing the putback. They would still keep the ball, and Best would miss another shot. But Dale Davis would get another offensive board, with Jalen Rose having the ball and making the pass to Best, who would not miss this time, hitting a three to give the Pacers a 96-94 lead with 16 seconds left. The Bucks would give Ray Allen the shot, as he missed a three, but Irvin Johnson would get the offensive rebound and get fouled, where he would miss the first and make the second to make it a one-point game. They would foul Jalen Rose, where he would miss both free throws to give Milwaukee one more second to have a chance to upset the number 1 seed in the East. The Bucks would inbound to Allen, who had to take a deep three that would miss. Indiana would escape with a 96-95 win and move on to the next round. Reggie Miller would have the best playoff game in Pacer history, setting a franchise record with 41 points while shooting 15 for 25 from the field. Jalen Rose also had 14, 4, and 6, while Dale Davis had 10 and 12 rebounds. For Milwaukee, Sam Cassell led the team with 22 points, while Ray Allen had 18 on just 6 for 21 shooting. Tim Thomas had 18 off the bench, and their other all-star Glenn Robinson had 11 points on 4 for 16 shooting. For the series, Reggie Miller, despite struggling in the first 2 games, led the series in scoring, averaging 24 points per game, while Jalen Rose averaged 19, and Travis Best was the X factor, averaging 11 points per game off the bench and had some of the biggest plays in the series. Ray Allen would lead the Bucks, averaging 22 points per game with 6 rebounds, while Sam Cassell averaged 15 points and 9 assists. Glenn Robinson and Tim Thomas each averaged 15 points, and Scott Williams averaged 10 points, 5.5 rebounds, and a block per game off the bench. Indiana would make it out of the first round for the 3rd straight year, while Milwaukee was still waiting on that first series win in 11 years. Heat versus Pistons. The 2-seed Miami Heat were coming into these playoffs ready for business, as they knew the expectation for this team was higher than the last few seasons. Meanwhile, the 7th-seeded Pistons were hoping to use this 1-2 punch to find a way to cut into that amazing Miami defense and pull off an upset to make it out of the first round for the first time in 9 years. Or at least they hoped they could, as their star, Grant Hill, suffered a bone bruise very late in the season and missed the final few games, but he did make a return for the playoffs. In Game 1, it was Jamal Mashburn who set the tone, scoring 11 first-quarter points to give Miami a 24-18 lead at the end of it. After holding a lead, Detroit would start to find their way, going on a 15-9 run to tie the game with just over 3.5 minutes left in the half. Miami scored a few buckets at the end of the second to give them a 44-40 lead going into halftime. After a close start to the third, with Miami leading 52-50 at the 8:41 mark, they would turn it up, going on a 16-8 run to take a 68-58 lead at the end of the third. They kept their foot on the gas in the fourth, starting on an 11-6 run to open up a 15-point lead. Miami would carry on the rest of the way and win Game 1 95-85. A big factor in this game was turnovers, with that Miami defense forcing 18 of them. Jamal Mashburn had a great game with 29 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists while shooting 10 for 17. Alonzo Mourning also showed why he was the reigning 2-time DPOY, finishing with 9 blocks, along with 20 points and 9 rebounds. They also had Dan Marley have 11 and 10 rebounds, Bruce Bowen had 11, and Anthony Carter had 10 points and 7 assists with 4 steals. For Detroit, it was the Jerry Stackhouse show, as he had 23 points, but his duo partner Grant Hill struggled, and was obviously not fully recovered from that injury. With just 11 points, only shot 3 for 9 with 5 fouls. Lindsey Hunter had 11 and Jerome Williams scored 10 off the bench, but it just wasn't enough to win this one. Miami leads 1-0. In Game 2, Miami got on top early, leading 24-19 after the first. They would start hot in the second as well, going on a 9-4 run to take a 10-point lead 3 minutes in. Detroit were finding their way, going on a 15-4 run to take a 38-37 lead and eventually lead 45-44 at halftime. Similar to Game 1, Miami would turn it up in the second half, as led by starting forward P.J. Brown, they would go on a 21-11 run to take a 65-56 lead. But unlike Game 1, Detroit had a response. Thanks to the Heat going scoreless for the final 4 minutes of the third, Detroit would take a 68-65 lead going into the fourth. The Pistons held on to a 74-71 lead with 8:28 left in the fourth. From that point, Miami would get the revenge, as Detroit would go scoreless for the next 5 minutes and 13 seconds, helping the Heat take an 80-74 lead, led by Mashburn and Mourning. This wouldn't be the end of it, however, as thanks to a few turnovers and fouls by Miami, Detroit would go on an 8-2 run and tied the game at 82 with 58 seconds left. With 43 seconds left, Dan Marley would miss a three but make it back up, blocking Stackhouse on the other end and giving Miami a chance with 26 seconds left. The ball was in the hands of Jamal Mashburn, who was on fire in this series so far. Mashburn would take his time and eventually hit a shot with 8 seconds to give Miami an 84-82 lead. On the final possession, Jerry Stackhouse, with a chance to tie or win the game, turned it over thanks to Dan Marley again, and Miami would sneak by with a Game 2 victory. Jamal Mashburn had another great performance, finishing with 24-7-5 and the game winner. Mourning also had 22 and 8, while P.J. Brown had 12, Marley had 10 with 4 steals, and Anthony Carter finished with 10 points, 6 rebounds, and 13 assists. For Detroit, once again, Stackhouse left the team with 26 points, yet no one else could be a big factor. Terry Mills had 11, and Michael Curry had 10. But Detroit had more sad things going on as well, with Grant Hill still struggling. He decided to play Game 2 and even hit his first few shots, but at one point in the first half, he re-aggravated the injury, but still tried to play through it until eventually he couldn't do it anymore. He finished with 9 points on 3 for 7 shooting in just 21 minutes. It was decided that his season was over, and now Detroit had everything going against them going back home looking to avoid the brooms in Game 3. The Heat started Game 3 taking an early 15-7 lead. This struck Detroit, as they showed the desperation and fight to play at least one more game, even if they didn't have their star. Detroit would score 10 straight points and eventually lead a 22-18 lead after the first. But that fight stopped right there. Led by the Miami bench, the Heat would go on a 15-0 run to start the second quarter, with Detroit being held scoreless for the first 5:45 of the second, giving Miami a 33-22 lead. Detroit would score some buckets late to cut the lead to 42-37 at halftime. Miami turned up the gas one more time to start the third, going on an 11-4 run to take a 12-point lead. After Detroit tried to fight back, Miami won the third on an 8-0 run to lead 70-52. They would start the fourth on a 10-3 run and blow the game open, winning 91-72 and sweeping the Pistons. The Heat dominated this game from the box score, shooting 52% from the field and 43% from 3 compared to 31% from the field and 21% from 3. Also winning the rebounding battle 47-35, assist battle 21-11, and outscoring Detroit's bench 45-17. Heat's leading scorer for the closeout game was Clarence Weatherspoon, who dropped 18 and 10. Alonzo Mourning had 12, 9, and 3 blocks. Mashburn had 11, Otis Thorpe had 10 and 10 off the bench, and even Rodney Buford, who played his only game of the series at Game 3, had 11. For the Pistons, Stackhouse tried his best by scoring 25, while Michael Curry, who replaced Grant Hill, had 14, but no one else scored in double figures for them. For the series, Jamal Mashburn was the guy, averaging 21, 5, and 5 on 49, 50, 82 shooting splits. Alonzo Mourning averaged 18 points and almost 9 rebounds, along with 4.7 blocks, while Dan Marley averaged 10 points, 5 rebounds, and 2.7 steals. Jerry Stackhouse led the way for Detroit, averaging just under 25 points per game, but the only other double-figure scorer was Grant Hill, who averaged 11 points on 37% shooting in his 2 games. Miami will move past the first round for only the second time in franchise history and also complete the first sweep in team history. Meanwhile, Detroit was going home after the opening round again, still looking for a series win for the first time in almost 10 years. Knicks versus Raptors. The third seed Knicks are ready to start their journey of making it back to the finals. It started by going against the 6th seed Raptors, who were set to play in their first playoff series in franchise history. With the biggest market in the world and one of the most electric players in the league playing in this series, all eyes are going to be on here, waiting to see who will make it out. The Knicks used their playoff experience very early on, leading 27-12 after the first quarter, with Allen Houston scoring 11. The Raptors took some time to settle into their first postseason experience, eventually cutting the lead down 46-37 at halftime. Toronto used the break to regroup, coming out on a 13-8 run to begin the third and cut the lead to 4. After some back and forth play, New York would go on a 17-12 run to end the third with a 71-62 lead. Toronto would fight back once again, scoring the first 6 points of the fourth to trail by just 3. The game would get very interesting and come down to the final few minutes. Ewing would hit a shot to break the tie of 83 with a minute 28 left. Vince Carter would come down and miss a shot, but McGrady would get the board and get fouled, making both free throws to tie it back up. On the next possession, Larry Johnson would hit a huge three-pointer to lead by 3 with 42 seconds. Latrell Sprewell, who made the assist to Johnson for the 3, will commit a flagrant foul on Carter, who made 1 of 2 and get the ball back. Toronto would get 3 chances, but McCarter, McGrady, and Christie would all miss layups, where Chris Childs would secure the board and make 2 free throws that eventually went on to seal the game as the Knicks won Game 1 92-88. Sprewell and Houston led the team with 21 points, while Larry Johnson and Ewing both had 15. Toronto was led by Tracy McGrady, who led the game with 25 points and 10 rebounds in his playoff debut. Carter struggled in his debut, scoring 16 points but shooting 3 for 20 from the field. Veterans Kevin Willis had 13-11 and Charles Oakley had 11-7-6. The Knicks led 1-0. The Raptors started Game 2 opposite of Game 1, getting out to an 18-9 lead and leading 26-15 at the end of the first. The start of the second was a slugfest, with just 8 combined points between the teams in the first 5 minutes. Both teams would eventually settle in, especially the Knicks, who ended the half on a 17-9 run to trail 41-34 at the break. Toronto would start the third similar to the first, going on a 12-3 run to take a 16-point lead and eventually lead 67-55 after 3. The Knicks would finally get it going and show their playoff experience, led by Larry Johnson, who would go on a 12-5 run to start the fourth and trim the lead to 5. Then it was Latrell Sprewell's turn to take over, as he scored 11 straight points for the Knicks and tied the game at 78. In the last few possessions, Muggsy Bogues would make a 3 to give Toronto an 81-78 lead with a minute 34 left. Chris Childs missed a shot on the other end, but they kept the ball, and it led to a Ewing dunk to cut the lead to 1. But Ewing would foul Vince Carter on the other end, where he would make both free throws to bring the lead back to 3. Allen Houston would get fouled on the other end and make both free throws to make it 83-82 with 38 seconds left. Vince Carter would take a quick 3 on the next play, which missed and gave New York a chance to take the lead for the first time since the early first quarter. With 7 seconds left, Sprewell capped off his amazing fourth quarter with a shot to give the Knicks a 1-point lead. The last possession for the Raptors had D. Brown getting a 3-point shot that would miss, and the Knicks would complete the comeback and win Game 2 84-83. Latrell Sprewell was the hero for the Knicks, finishing with 25 points, scoring 13 in the fourth, and hitting the game winner. Ewing also had 19 points and 9 rebounds, while Allen Houston had 12 and Larry Johnson had 11. For Toronto, Vince Carter will have a better game too, finishing with 27, 7, and 5 on 7 for 13 shooting. Kevin Willis had another good game with 16 and 10 off the bench, while McGrady had 13 and 7, and Antonio Davis had 12. A tough loss for the Raptors would now have this young team on the verge of being swept, and hope that going back home for the first ever NBA playoff game in Toronto will help them bounce back. Game 3 started very slow, with just 9 combined points for the first 5 minutes of the game. New York led 21-20 after the first. This game was a very back and forth one, with Toronto showing a lot of heart, trying to win the team's first ever playoff game and live to play one more time. The Knicks led 46-45 at halftime, while the Raptors bounced back and led 63-61 after the third. Heading to the final few possessions, this was anyone's game at this point. Larry Johnson would make 2 free throws to give New York an 80-78 lead with a minute 11 left. Charles Oakley would turn the ball over in the next play, which led to an Allen Houston jumper to increase the lead to 4. Antonio Davis get fouled to make both free throws to cut the lead to 2 with 42 seconds left. With the Raptors needing one more stop to get a chance to tie or take the lead, just like Game 1, Larry Johnson would hit the huge 3-pointer and play the role of the hero. The shot would give New York a 5-point lead and eventually seal the game, giving the Knicks an 87-80 win and sweep of the Toronto Raptors. Allen Houston led the Knicks with 23 points in the closeout game, while the hero Larry Johnson had 14. Patrick Ewing had 12 and 11 with 3 steals and 4 blocks. Latrell Sprewell had 11 and 6 assists, and Chris Childs had 10 and 7 off the bench. The Raptors' leading scorer in this game was Antonio Davis, who had 18 and 12 with 4 blocks. Carter finished with 15, 7, and 8, but struggled to shoot again, going 5 for 17 from the field. McGrady had 12 on 5 for 14 shooting. Charles Oakley had 10, 14, and 4 steals, and Kevin Willis had 10 off the bench. For the series, Latrell Sprewell led the Knicks, averaging 19 points per game, while Houston averaged 18 and 2.7 steals, along with Ewing averaging 15, 9, and 1.7 blocks, and Larry Johnson averaging 13 points and 5 rebounds. For Toronto, Vince Carter averaged 19 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, and a block, but shot just 30% from the field and 10% from 3, while Tracy McGrady averaged 16 points, 7 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks, while shooting 38% from the field and 28% from 3. Their veterans helped a lot as well, with Antonio Davis averaging 13 points and 8 rebounds, Kevin Willis averaging 13 and 8, and Charles Oakley averaging 10 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, with 2 steals. The Knicks were moving on to the next round for the 9th straight season, while Toronto would unfortunately end their first playoff series with 0 wins. Hornets versus 76ers. The 4-seed Charlotte Hornets are ready to get back to the semifinals, the place they lost back in 1998, but had to get past the 5-seed 76ers, who also lost in the semifinals recently. This would be a tough matchup with a team led by a star facing a great overall team. The Hornets got off to a great start in game 1, scoring the first 9 points of the game. The 76ers would take a minute but eventually settle in and go on an 11-5 run to trail 22-17 at the end of the first. They would use this to start the second as well, going on a 10-4 run to take a 27-26 lead. The game will be tied at 31 at the 5:50 mark in the second, and then the Hornets will go on an 11-2 run to take a 42-33 lead. The 76ers will get a few buckets back and trail 44-41 at halftime. The game would stay tight, with the Hornets leading 51-50 a few minutes into the third. Then Allen Iverson would take over, scoring 18 points in the third, leading to a 25-15 run, giving the 76ers a 75-66 lead after 3. The Hornets would fight back, starting the fourth on a 9-3 run and cutting the lead to 3. After some close minutes of the fourth, the 76ers would eventually go on a 14-6 run and end up winning game 1, 92-82. Allen Iverson absolutely dominated this game, finishing with 40 points on 13 for 25 shooting. Along with him, Eric Snow, Tyrone Hill, and George Lynch all had 10. The defense of the 76ers also shined, forcing Charlotte to shoot 37% from the field, 22% from 3, and forced 20 turnovers. Derek Coleman led the Hornets with 23 points and 16 rebounds. Anthony Mason, Eddie Jones, and David Wesley all had 14, and Brad Miller scored 13 off the bench. The 76ers stole Game 1 in Charlotte and led 1-0. Game 2 was a very tight game. The Hornets led 24-20 after the first, led by Derek Coleman's 10 points. The 76ers would respond with a 7-all run to start the second to take a 27-24 lead. After some more back-and-forth action, Eddie Jones hit a three-pointer to help Charlotte go into halftime with a 49-47 lead. After a third quarter similar to the others in this game, the Sixers led 74-71 going into the final frame. The game came down to the final possessions. Anthony Mason would make a layup to tie the game at 89 with a minute left. Mason would draw an offensive foul in the next play on Theo Ratliff, but missed a layup. It was cleaned up by Eldon Campbell, who tipped it in to give Charlotte a 2-point lead with 26 seconds. The ball would end up in Allen Iverson's hands, who would find Eric Snow for a jumper to tie the game at 91 with 13 seconds. The Hornets' final shot would go to their star, Eddie Jones, who missed a jumper as time expired, sending the game into overtime. Derek Coleman was star in the extra period, scoring 8 of the first 13 points for Charlotte. The Sixers would shoot 3 for 9 in overtime, leading to the Hornets winning 108-98. Coleman would be the hero of the game, finishing with 29, 6, and 7 with 4 blocks on 10 for 15 shooting. The entire starting five for Charlotte would contribute in many ways. Eldon Campbell had 20 and 14, Eddie Jones had 19, 8, and 8, Anthony Mason had 14, 5, and 6, and David Wesley had 11 and 7 with 4 steals. Tony Kukoc would lead the Sixers in scoring, with 20 off the bench, while Eric Snow had 19 points and 13 assists, and Theo Ratliff had 15. Iverson was struggling this game, finishing with 13 points on 5 for 21 shooting. Tyrone Hill also had 10 and 13. The Hornets would tie the series at 1, heading back to Philadelphia looking to do what they did to them in Game 1. Going into Game 3, the Sixers would be without one of their starters, as point guard Eric Snow would suffer a chip fracture in his ankle late in Game 2, pushing Aaron McKie to the starting lineup. This game would start just like Game 2, with an 18-18 tie at the end of the first. After some more tight play, the Sixers would lead 24-22 at the 8:35 mark. The Hornets would respond with a 17-8 run to take a 7-point lead, and eventually lead 40-38 at halftime. Charlotte would use this momentum to start the third as well, going on a 13-8 run to take a 7-point lead again. But the Sixers would fight back and go on an 11-4 run to end the third tied at 57. After a slow scoring start to the fourth, having the game tied at 59 at the 9-minute mark, the Sixers would go on a 17-9 run to take an 8-point lead and eventually go on to win 81-76. Both teams struggled offensively, with both teams shooting under 40% from the field. Iverson will bounce back in this game, scoring 27 but still shooting 9 for 27 from the field. Aaron McKie and Tony Kukoc both had 12, and Theo Ratliff had 10 points, 11 rebounds, and 6 blocks. Eddie Jones led the Hornets with 18 points along with 5 steals, while having David Wesley and Eldon Campbell scoring 14, and Derek Coleman and Baron Davis scoring 11. The Sixers were now on the verge of winning the series, and doing it at home would be great, but they knew Charlotte was too good. They would have to really put them away in Game 4. The 76ers would start Game 4 leading 12-5, but the Hornets would respond right away, going on a 20-13 run to tie the game at 25. The Sixers would score a few at the end of the first to give them a 30-25 lead. The Sixers would take control in the second, taking an 8-point lead at one point and leading 54-50 at halftime. Charlotte would give it their everything early in the third, starting on a 12-6 run to tie the game and playing in a back-and-forth third. They would take a 79-75 lead going into the final quarter. Aaron McKie, who was put into the starting lineup 2 games ago, would have his moment, scoring 13 points in the first 5 minutes of the fourth to spark a 17-10 run and lead 92-89. The Hornets would now be able to make it back up, scoring just 4 points in the final 5 minutes of the game, and the Sixers would go on to win 105-99 and win the series 3-1. Iverson had 26 points and 7 assists, while Aaron McKie would finish with 25 points and 11 assists. Mike Geiger also made an impact, putting up 17 and 10 off the bench, while Tyrone Hill and Theo Ratliff each had 10. Anthony Mason and Eldon Campbell both had 21-point double-doubles, while Derek Coleman had 17 and 11 with 5 blocks, and Eddie Jones had 17 points and 8 assists. For the series, Allen Iverson would average just under 26 points per game with 5 assists. The point guards for the Sixers would be the big factors, with Eric Snow averaging 14 and 11 assists in his 2 games, and Aaron McKee would average 12 and 4, while Theo Ratliff also averaged 11 points with 8 rebounds and almost 4 blocks per game. Derek Coleman would start for the Hornets, averaging 20 and 12 with 3 blocks against his former team. The entire starting lineup would average double figures. Jones averaged 17 points and 5 rebounds, almost 5 assists and 2.5 steals. Campbell averaged 14 points and 8 rebounds. Mason averaged 12.5 points with almost 10 rebounds and 5 assists. And Wesley averaged 11 points with almost 5 assists. The Sixers will move on to the second round for the second straight season, while Charlotte, being the 4th seed, suffered a tough upset. Lakers versus Kings. The Lakers were on a mission. After being by far the best team in the regular season, the journey and expectation to continue that in the postseason started now. And that first opponent will be the 8-seeded Kings, looking to pull off a massive upset, and with this team, we're not going to back down easy. Game 1 started with a bang, as Chris Webber would get the party started by scoring 14 points in the first quarter. The game was tied at 26, and so the Lakers ended the first on an 8-2 run to lead 34-28. The Kings would respond, going on a 13-6 run to take a 1-point lead a few minutes into the second. But the Lakers would give one right back, going on a 15-4 run and eventually lead 65-55 at halftime. In the third quarter, it was Shaquille O'Neal's time to dominate, scoring 17 in the quarter, helping LA lead 91-79 going into the fourth. In the fourth, more of the same continued for Shaq and the Lakers as they go on to win Game 1, 117-107. O'Neal showed why he was the MVP of the league in this game, finishing with 46 points, 17 rebounds, and 5 blocks, while Bryant had 23, 7, and 5, and Glenn Rice had 18. Chris Webber will have 28 in this game while fouling out. Jason Williams also had 20, Tony Delk scored 17 off the bench, Nick Anderson had 11, and Vlade Divac would have 10. The Lakers' dominant second half led them to a 1-0 series lead. Game 2 started with a 10-10 tie, until Kobe Bryant decided it was his turn to dominate. He would score 15 in the first to help spark a 25-14 run to give the Lakers a 35-24 lead after 1. The Kings would fight back, starting the second on a 15-4 run to cut the lead to 2. But the Lakers would end the second on a 13-2 run to bring the lead up to 15 at halftime. Just like Game 1, the Lakers would dominate the second half, specifically ending the third on a 15-9 run to expand the lead to 19 at the end of the third, and eventually blow the game open in the fourth, and end up winning Game 2 113-89. This was Kobe Bryant's game to pop off, as he finished with 32 points on 12 for 20 shooting, while Shaq had 23, 19, and 6, Glenn Rice had 18 again, and Rick Fox scored 11 off the bench. For the Kings, Webber had 22, 12, and 6, but shot 8 for 28 from the field. Divac will also have 14, but no one else did much more. The Lakers, now up 2-0, were looking to end this series quickly back in Sacramento. In Game 3, the Lakers would lead 28-22 after the first quarter, seemingly coming out hungry and looking to end this series right here. But Sacramento wouldn't back down, starting the second on an 8-2 run to tie the game at 30. The Kings would run out of juice for a second, though, going scoreless for almost 4.5 minutes to give the Lakers a 39-39 lead and eventually a 51-46 halftime lead. The Kings started the third on an 8-4 run to cut the lead to 1, where this became a very competitive game, and the Lakers led 71-66 after 3. Sacramento found the rhythm at this point, starting the fourth on a 7-1 run to take their first lead of the game. The Lakers would score a few buckets in a row, with Kobe Bryant making a layup at the 8:13 mark to give LA a 78-73 lead. But then came a very rare drought at the worst time. After that Bryant layup, the Lakers would go almost 4 minutes without a bucket, with Sacramento taking advantage and holding a 9-point lead, which the Lakers couldn't recover from, as the Kings won Game 3, 99-91. The Kings will hold the Lakers to just 20 points in the fourth and shooting 36% from the field in the second half, also finding a way to shut down Shaq, as he had just 6 points on 2 for 11 shooting in the second half. Chris Webber had a great game, finishing with 29, 14, and 8. Peja Stojakovic also played a big factor, scoring 19 off the bench, while Vlade Divac had 15 and 12, Tony Delk had 11, and Jason Williams scored 10. Kobe tried everything he could for the Lakers, putting up 35 points, including scoring 16 of the 24th quarter points for LA. Shaq had 21 and 17 while shooting 8 for 22, and Glenn Rice had 13. The Kings now trail 2-1, but with another win, could make this 1-8 matchup that looked like the Lakers would dominate very interesting. The Kings would start Game 4 the same way they ended Game 3, opening up on a 20-9 run. They would lead 27-18 after the first, but open the lead up again, up 33-23 3 minutes into the second. The Lakers would respond, going on an 11-3 run to trim the lead to 3, but Sacramento will punch right back, going on a 20-12 run to lead 56-45 at halftime. The Lakers wouldn't let the Kings get away that easy, starting the third on an 8-4 run to cut the lead to 7, and eventually trail by that number going into the fourth. But the Kings will push them over in the fourth, starting on a 9-4 run to lead by 12, and eventually took the reins of this game, winning 101-88 to force a Game 5. The Lakers struggled offensively, shooting 38% from the field, 17% from three, and 65% from the line. 6 players scoring double figures for Sacramento, led by Chris Webber, who finished with 23 points, 13 rebounds, 8 assists, 4 steals, and 7 blocks, stuffing the stat sheet. The bench would score 42 points, with John Barry having 17, Tony Delk having 12, and Stojakovic had 11, while Vlade Divac put in 13 and 11, and Nick Anderson scored 11. Bryant would have another good game, finishing with 32 points, while Shaq had 25 and 16, and Glenn Rice had 17. But it was a struggle for anybody else to contribute in this game. And now, all of a sudden, the number one seed in the West and unanimous best team in the league were going into a winner-go-home Game 5 situation in the first round by an 8 seed. What would take place back in LA? The LA Lakers would play Game 5 like it was their last. They came out leading 31-20 in the first behind Shaq's 10 points. He would add him 10 more in the second, slowly going the lead to 15 at halftime. The Kings could never find any consistent in this game, as the Lakers would show that number one defensive rating, blowing the lead more and more and eventually dominating the Kings, winning 113-86 and winning the series 3-2. The Lakers would hold Sacramento to shooting 33% from the field, while dominating both the rebounding battle 54-35 and the assist battle 31-14. O'Neal will finish with 32 points and 18 rebounds, while Bryant had 17 and 6 assists. Glenn Rice also put up 14, and AC Green would score 10. Chris Webber led the Kings with 20, but no one else would score double digits for this team. For the series, Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant were amazing, with Shaq averaging almost 30 points along with 17 rebounds and 2 blocks, while Bryant averaged almost 28 points on 49% shooting. Glenn Rice was a nice third option, putting up 16 points a game. Chris Webber played a good series too, averaging 24 points with 9 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and 2 blocks. Tony Delk and Vlade Divac would both average 11, and Jason Williams averaged 10, but it wasn't enough, especially in Game 5 to pull off the upset, as the Lakers would make it out of the first round for the 4th straight year, while the Kings were gone and still looking for their first playoff series win in almost 20 years. Jazz versus Sonics. The 2-seed Utah Jazz are not playing around in this series, with expectations of winning a championship with their very experienced team, while the 7-seed Sonics are hoping to end that dream and advance as well. Game 1 started well, with Karl Malone scoring 10 early and the game tied at 12. The Sonics would take control and go on a 13-10 run to eventually lead 30-25 after the first. The game went back and forth in the second, with the Jazz leading 52-49 at halftime. The Jazz would start to take control of this game, as Karl Malone will help the Jazz go on a 22-8 run to take a 74-57 lead. They would continue this for the rest of the game and end up winning 104-93. Karl Malone put on an amazing performance, with 50 points and 12 rebounds on 18 for 32 shooting. He scored double-figure points in every quarter, including 29 in the first and fourth quarter combined. They also got help from Jeff Hornacek, who had 13 and 11 assists, John Stockton with 10 and 10, and Howard Isley having 10 points. Gary Payton would have 24, 11, and 6, while Shammond Williams would have 23 points, along with Brent Berry having 11 and Vin Baker having 10. Malone would put the Jazz up 1-0. The Jazz started Game 2 hot, going on a 10-2 run early. The Sonics would immediately respond with a 10-2 run of their own to tie the game. Utah would go on a 13-7 run to end the first with a 25-19 lead. Utah kept that lead up, leading 29-23 at the 9:17 mark of the second, then exploding onto a 28-17 run to lead by 17 at halftime. They didn't stop either, going on a 10-2 run to lead by 25. Utah would end up winning Game 2 101-87 and lead 2-0. Malone finished with 23 points, including 15 in the third, while John Stockton had 21 and 11 assists. Byron Russell also put in 19, and Howard Isley had 15 off the bench. Gary Payton led the Sonics again with 20 points. Rashard Lewis had 19. Shammond Williams would have another good game with 15, 6, and 10, and Vin Baker had 10. The Jazz took both games at home and looked to end the series in Seattle. The Sonics came out like their season was on the line in Game 3, leading 20-16 after the first, and then going on an 11-2 run to start the second and lead by 13. Utah would fight back and trim the lead to 6 by halftime. After the Sonics brought the lead back up to 10, Utah would go on a 10-4 run led by Karl Malone to cut the lead to 4. But Seattle would go on a 14-6 run and take control of the game, winning 89-78. Seattle put in a good all-around performance. Payton had 23, 7, and 10. Vin Baker had 15 and 11. Rashard Lewis had 14 and 10. Ruben Patterson scored 13 off the bench, and Horace Grant had 10 points. Karl Malone would try his best, putting up 30 points, including 22 in the second half. Jeff Hornacek had 15, and Byron Russell had 10, with John Stockton having 13 assists. Seattle trailed 2-1, now needing one more win to tie the series and force a Game 5. Game 4 was tight early, with the Jazz leading 29-26 after the first. But then, Utah would go ice cold, scoring just 7 points in the second quarter and trailed 50-36 at halftime. Seattle continued to lead big in the third, being up by 17 just about halfway through the quarter. Utah would finally find a rhythm, going on a 23-13 run to trim the lead to 7 entering the fourth. They would continue this momentum to start the fourth, going on a 9-4 run to cut the lead down 82-80. Then, Gary Payton got into a zone. He scored 15 points in the fourth quarter, and led by him, Rashard Lewis, the Sonics going on a 15-3 run and ended up winning the game 104-93. Gary Payton had an excellent game, finishing with a 35 point, 10 rebound, 11 assist triple double, along with 6 steals. Rashard Lewis also had 20, with Vin Baker having 18 and Brent Berry having 16. Brian Russell led the Jazz in this game with 26 points, as Malone had 23 and 14, Jeff Hornacek had 16, and John Stockton had 13 and 12. Seattle fought back, and now with the series tied at 2, there would be a Game 5 in Utah. Game 5 would be a very close battle in this winner go home scenario. Utah led 23-18 after the first quarter, but the game was kept very close, with Utah only leading by 4 at halftime. Utah tried to pull away early in the third, starting on an 11-4 run to take an 11-point lead and lead 79-70 after the third. But Seattle was not done yet, starting the fourth on a 9-1 run to cut the lead down to 1. From this point on, Utah would lock in defensively, forcing multiple turnovers and getting contributions from John Stockton and Alden Polonice, giving them a 94-91 lead with under a minute left. Polonice would miss 2 free throws and let Gary Payton score to make it a 1-point game with 25 seconds left. John Stockton got fouled and make both his free throws to increase the lead back to 3. Seattle had one more chance to tie the game as it ended to OT. Chuck Person would get the shot, but ultimately missed the game-tying 3. Utah would get a 96-93 win and move on to the next round. The entire Utah starting 5 contributed in squad in double figures, with Malone leading with 27 points, while Stockton had 17, 7, and 15, Russell had 16, and Jeff Hornacek and Alden Polonice both had 13. Gary Payton would have another good game, with 27, 6, and 9. Rashard Lewis also had 20, with Vin Baker scoring 17 and Ruben Patterson having 15. For the series, Karl Malone would dominate, averaging 30 points per game with 9 rebounds and 59% shooting. Brian Russell would average almost 16 points a game, while John Stockton averaged 13 points and 12 assists, and Jeff Hornacek averaged 12 per game. Gary Payton starred with almost 26 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and almost 2 steals per game, giving it his all. Rashard Lewis averaged 15 points with 6 rebounds, Vin Baker averaged 14 points with 7 rebounds, and Shammond Williams would average 10 points a game. Utah was moving on to the next round for the 5th straight season, while Seattle will be first-round exits for the first time in 5 years. Blazers versus Timberwolves. The third seed Blazers were looking to make it back to at least the conference finals for the second year in a row with this amazing team, while Minnesota, with their best team in franchise history at this point, was looking to win their first playoff series ever. The game got off to a great start, being tied at 17 more than halfway through the first quarter. Scottie Pippen would then get hot, scoring 13 points in the quarter, helping spark a 16-5 run to give Portland a 33-22 lead after the first. Minnesota would respond with a 13-2 run to start the second and tie the game at 35. The rest of the half was very tight, as Portland led 48-47 at halftime. The third quarter continued the same, with Minnesota eventually leading 75-69 after 3. But then, Minnesota would have a nightmare quarter, where excluding the last 30 seconds, they scored just 7 points in the fourth, giving Portland a 91-88 win. Pippen would lead Portland with 28 points and 9 rebounds, while Damon Stoudemire had 18, Steve Smith scored 17, and Rasheed Wallace had 15. Kevin Garnett would finish with a triple-double, having 12, 10, and 11, but would struggle, shooting 6 for 20 from the field. Malik Sealy would lead them in scoring with 23 points, while Terrell Brandon had 17 and 12, and Wally Zerbiak had 12. Portland leads 1-0. Minnesota got off to a good start in Game 2, leading 24-19 after the first, and starting the second on an 8-3 run to take a 10-point lead. Portland would bounce back and go on a 16-5 run to take the lead by 1. The half ended very close, with Minnesota leading 41-40 at halftime. The Blazers started the third on a 10-2 run to give them a 7-point lead, and eventually lead 67-58 entering the fourth. The Wolves would fight back and start the fourth on a 9-2 run to trim the lead down to 2. This game would come down to the wire. Garnett would go 1 for 2 from the line to cut the lead down to 83-80 with just under a minute left. Pippen would come down and miss a shot, then Terrell Brandon would miss a 3, but Anthony Peeler would tip it back in to make it a 1-point game. Damon Stoudemire got fouled and make both free throws to jump the lead back to 3. Malik Sealy would get a chance, but missed a 3 to tie it, while Pippen would make 1 of 2 to seal the game. Pippen would lead Portland again, finishing with 21 points, while Sabonis had 19, Stoudemire had 13, and Steve Smith scored 12. Kevin Garnett finished with 23, 10, and 5, while Terrell Brandon had 27 and 6. Portland's now up 2-0, with a chance to end it quickly in Minnesota, but it would not be easy. The Wolves would start Game 3 great, leading 24-20 behind Brandon's 12 points. Portland would keep it tight, tying the game at 28 at the 8:34 mark in the second. Minnesota would take control back, going on a 9-0 run to take a 9-point lead, and eventually lead 47-40 at halftime. The Blazers would finally take some control, starting the third on an 11-4 run to tie the game. The third would stay tight, with the game tied at 68 after 3. Minnesota would start the fourth on a 16-7 run and take the game, winning 94-87 and keeping their season alive. The Wolves would shoot 53% from the field and 60% from 3. Terrell Brandon would have a great game, scoring 28 points to go with 7 rebounds and 12 assists, while Garnett had another triple-double with 23, 13, and 10. Anthony Peter also contributed with 13 points. Steve Smith led the Blazers with 22 points, while Sabonis had 17 with 3 blocks, Pippen had 16, 5, and 6, Wallace had 15, and Brian Grant scored 11 off the bench. The Wolves now get another chance to tie the series and potentially force a Game 5 back in Portland. The Wolves will continue their ways in Game 4, leading 22-18 after the first, then starting the second on a 14-5 run to lead by 13. Portland would fight back and go on a 13-4 run to trail 40-36 at halftime. The third quarter continued close, with a tie game at 50 over halfway through. Minnesota would take control again, going on a 14-7 run to lead 64-57 entering the fourth. The Blazers, with a chance to win the series, locked in, starting the fourth on a 13-4 run to take the lead 70-68. Minnesota would, unfortunately, go cold in the last few minutes, making just one shot in the final 4 minutes and letting Portland take over and eventually win 85-77, winning the series 3-1. Minnesota shoot 22% from the field in the fourth and 35% in the entire second half. 6 players were scoring double figures for Portland, with Arvydas Sabonis leading with 15 and 11, as Wallace also had 15. Steve Smith had 14, Stoudemire had 11, Pippen finished with 10, 7, and 6, and Detlef Schrempf scored 10. Kevin Garnett led the Wolves with 17, 10, and 9, but shot 5 for 20 from the field. Terrell Brandon had 13, Bobby Jackson scored 11 off the bench, and Malik Sealy had 10. For the series, Scottie Pippen used his championship experience, leading Portland averaging just under 19 points per game with 7 rebounds and 4 assists. Alongside him was Steve Smith averaging 16 points, Sabonis averaging 14 with just under 7 rebounds and 1.5 blocks, Rasheed Wallace averaging 13.5 points with 6 rebounds, a steal, and 1.5 blocks, and Damon Stoudemire averaging 11 points with 5 assists. The Wolves' leading scorer was Terrell Brandon, who averaged 19.5 points per game with almost 6 rebounds and 8.5 assists, while Kevin Garnett averaged almost 19 points with 10 rebounds and just under 9 assists, and Malik Sealy averaged 12.5 points. Portland now advanced to the second round and got one step closer to making it back to the conference finals. Meanwhile, Minnesota was a first round exit for the 4th straight year, still looking for that first series win. Spurs versus Suns. The 4th seed Spurs started their journey to repeat with a matchup against the 5th seed Phoenix Suns. Both these teams would be without their stars, with Tim Duncan dealing with a knee injury suffered very late in the season, forcing him to miss the series, while Jason Kidd was suffering from an ankle injury and would miss the start of the series. With 2 All-NBA first-team members injured, the team that would get the most out of their depth and fill the hole of their stars more would win it. Game 1 had a low-scoring start, with the Spurs leading just 17-13 after the first. With the Spurs still leading, up 26-21 almost 5 minutes into the second, the Suns would then go on a 20-9 run to end the half leading 41-35. Phoenix would continue this as a third, going on an 11-6 run to take an 11-point lead. The Spurs, led by Sean Elliott and Avery Johnson, would go on a 12-4 run to end the third down 56-53. The fourth quarter was very tight, including 8 lead changes and coming down to the final few minutes. Malik Rose would hit a close shot to give the Spurs a 68-67 lead with a little less than 2 minutes left. Penny Hardaway would miss a shot on the other end, but Rodney Rogers would put it back in to put the Suns back in front. Rose would turn it over, and Corey Blount would get fouled to make 2 free throws to give Phoenix a 3-point lead. David Robinson would score back and cut it to 1. Then Clifford Robinson would miss a 3 to give San Antonio a chance. With 1 second left, Sean Elliott would get the shot, but miss and foul Corey Blount. Blount would go 1 for 2 from the line, leaving the door open for the Spurs to either tie or win the game. Unfortunately, they wouldn't get a shot up. Mario Elie turning the ball over, and Phoenix would steal game 1, winning 72-70. Penny Hardaway and Clifford Robinson both had 17 points to lead the Suns, while Rodney Rogers had 15 off the bench, and Shawn Marion had 10 and 9. Sean Elliott led the Spurs with 15 points, while Avery Johnson had 14, and Samaki Walker had 13 points and 16 rebounds. Dave Robinson was struggling in this game, shooting 3 for 12 and finishing with just 11 points along with 11 rebounds. Phoenix stole game 1 in San Antonio and would maybe hope to do it again and put themselves in a great position. The Spurs will come back in Game 2 and lead the first quarter 24-20 at the end. Competitive start to the second, we have the game tied at 34 about halfway through. Then, the Spurs will take over. Led by David Robinson's 13, they'll go on a 17-3 run and open up a 54-37 lead at halftime. The Suns will fight back in the third, going on a 14-4 run to cut the lead down to 4, but the Spurs will bring it back up to 9 at the end of the third. San Antonio would take control, starting the fourth on a 7-1 run to open up a 14-point lead, and eventually end up winning Game 2 85-70. David Robinson will bounce back, finishing with 25, 15, and 5 with 3 blocks, while Avery Johnson also put in 21. Sean Elliott had 13 and 10, and Antonio Daniels scored 10 off the bench. Penny Hardaway led the Suns with 19 points, while Rodney Rogers had 18 and 10 off the bench. Cliff Robinson scored 11, but shot 3 for 17 from the field, as well as everyone else not really finding their rhythm. The Spurs tied the series at 1, making it very interesting to see what would happen back in Phoenix. The Spurs are getting off to a great start in Game 3, opening the game leading 11-0. The Suns will settle in and trailed 27-21 after the first. The Suns would start the second on a 9-3 run and take a 32-30 lead. The rest of the quarter would be very competitive, with the Suns leading 50-49 at halftime despite David Robinson's 16 points in the quarter. The Suns would start the third on a 7-0 run to lead by 8, but San Antonio would fight back and go on a 17-7 run to take back a 2-point lead. The Suns led 69-66 at the 3:23 mark in the third, which is where the Spurs would go on their 13-0 run to lead by 10 going into the fourth. The Suns wouldn't let the reigning champs run them out, going on a 20-8 run led by an unexpected hero, Todd Day, who scored 16 points in the fourth and gave the Suns a 3-point lead with a minute 19 left after hitting a three. Antonio Daniels will miss a shot on the next play, then Clifford Robinson will make a layup to steal the game, giving Phoenix a 101-94 win. The Suns will hold San Antonio to 39% shooting from the field, while also dominating the assist battle 29-12. They would also have 6 double-figure scores, being led by Penny Hardaway, who had a 17-12-13 triple-double. Shawn Marion would have 16 and 14, and Todd Day, the hero of the fourth, would score all 16 of his points in that quarter. Ronnie Rogers would have 15, Cliff Robinson had 14, 7 and 5, and Kevin Johnson scored 10 off the bench. David Robinson would do everything he can, finishing with 37 points along with 13 rebounds and 4 blocks. Mario Elie had 12, Terry Porter had 11, and Samaki Walker put in 10 points along with 12 rebounds. The Suns now led 2-1, having the reigning champs on the ropes. Everything looked like it was going in Phoenix's way. Up 2-1, back at home with a chance to win the series, potentially beating the reigning champs, and to put an extra cherry on top, their star, Jason Kidd, would return for Game 4. After a close 8-7 lead by Phoenix a few minutes into the game, the Spurs would show their championship DNA, going on a 14-0 run to lead 21-8. Phoenix would end the quarter well, scoring 7 straight to trail 21-15. The Suns would take slight control in the second, leading 42-37 at halftime. The Suns would then take over this game, having a great third and lead 68-56 heading into the fourth. The Spurs, with their lives on the line, would start the fourth on a 12-4 run to cut the lead to 4. The guards for the Suns would go off in the fourth, as Penny Hardaway and Jason Kidd would lead the Suns on a great run and eventually end up winning 89-78 and taking out the Spurs 3-1. The Suns would play a good defensive game, holding the Spurs to 37% shooting from the field, 0 for 9 from 3, and 61% from the free throw line. Rodney Rogers, the sixth man of the year, will come up big with 23 points and 10 rebounds. Hardaway will also have 23, while Cliff Robinson had 10, and Jason Kidd finished with 9 points and 10 assists in his return. David Robinson had 21 and 16 in the elimination game, with Mario Elie also scoring 12. For the series, Penny Hardaway led the Suns with 19 points, 6.5 rebounds, almost 6 assists, almost 2 steals, and a block per game. Rodney Rogers averaged almost 18 points with 7 rebounds and 1.5 blocks, while Clifford Robinson averaged 13 points and 6.5 rebounds. David Robinson would try to do everything he could without Duncan, finishing the series averaging 23.5 points, almost 14 rebounds, almost 2 steals, and 3 blocks per game, while Avery Johnson averaged 12 points with 5 assists, and Sean Elliott averaged 10. The Suns would make it past the first round after being early exits 4 years in a row, while the Spurs' quest for repeat would end earlier than expected, with no Tim Duncan ruining their chances. Pacers versus 76ers. The Indiana Pacers, coming off a very tough 5-game series against an 8 seed, were going to have to step it up and look the part of a 1 seed, especially against the 5th seed Philadelphia 76ers, their top-tier defense, and Allen Iverson. The Pacers got off to a great start in Game 1, leading 16-4 early, led by Reggie Miller's 9 points. The Sixers would cut the lead to 9, but the Pacers would extend the lead back up 34-15 at the end of the first, by Reggie Miller and Jalen Rose combining for 27 points. The Sixers would slowly start to settle in, starting the second on an 11-6 run and cutting the lead to 12. But it would stop there, as they scored just 9 points in the final 7 minutes of the half to trail 54-37. Philadelphia would regroup and start the third on a 19-9 run and cut the lead down to 6. The Pacers would build a little distance, with Miller, Rose, and Crozier giving the Pacers a 78-69 lead at the end of the third. With the Sixers down 8 early in the fourth, Reggie Miller would continue with his excellent game, scoring 11 straight points and bringing the lead back to 17, as the Pacers would end up winning Game 1, 108-91. Game 1 was an historic one for the Pacers, with Reggie Miller and Jalen Rose both scoring 40 points, putting on amazing shows, while Austin Crozier had 11, 11, and 5 off the bench. Iverson would score 28, while Tyrone Hill had 20 and Aaron McKee scored 10 off the bench. Rose and Miller put Indiana up 1-0 in a dominant performance. Game 2 started with the Battle of the Stars, as Reggie Miller and Allen Iverson each had 11 points, but Indiana led 31-26 at the end of the first. The Pacers would start the second on an 8-0 run, with the Sixers not scoring for almost 4 minutes into the quarter. Philadelphia would never find a rhythm in the second, with the Pacers holding a 55-40 lead at halftime. The third quarter would continue the same, with Jalen Rose scoring 13 and the Pacers taking full control, leading 84-63 after the third. The Sixers would make it slightly competitive in the fourth, cutting the lead down as much as 4, but they were run out of time, and the Pacers won Game 2, 103-97. Jalen Rose had another great performance, leading with 30 points, while Austin Crochet made a big impact with 20 points and shot 4 for 4 from 3 off the bench. Reggie Miller had 19, Rick Smith scored 14, and Mark Jackson had 14 assists. Iverson would have 28 points again, along with 6 rebounds and 10 assists, while Theo Ratliff and Tyronn Hill each had 15, Matt Geiger scored 14, and Aaron McKie had 13 off the bench. Indiana won both games at home, and we're now going to Philadelphia looking to put the pedal to the metal. Game 3 started very competitively, with the Sixers leading 23-22 after it and continuing in the second, with the Sixers holding a 47-46 halftime lead. The third would be the same, until the Sixers went on a 10-2 run in the last 4 minutes to lead 70-65 entering the fourth. In the fourth, the Pacers would get into gear, led by Reggie Miller, Travis Best, and Sam Perkins. They would take control, and after a Perkins 3 and Best layup back-to-back, the Pacers would take Game 3, winning 97-89. The Pacers would shoot 63% in the fourth while also forcing 6 turnovers. Miller, Best, and Perkins would score 30 of the 32 fourth quarter points for Indiana, being the X factors. Miller led the Pacers with 29 points and 11 for 22 shooting, while Best had 19, Rose had 12, Perkins scored 10 off the bench, and Dale Davis finished with 10 and 17. Iverson scored 29, while McKee, who was back in the starting lineup after Eric Snow re-injured his ankle, had 20. Theo Ratliff had 13, while Tyronn Hill would have 10 and 14. This was a very tough loss for the Sixers, leading going into the fourth and now being down 3-0. They would need to go all out to try and keep their season alive. After a 7-7 tie earlier to start Game 4, the Sixers would show that elimination fight, going on a 26-11 run led by Iverson's 11 and lead 33-18 after the first. They would start the second similar, going on an 11-6 run and lead by 22. Indiana would fight back and go on a 12-2 run to bring the lead down to 8. The Sixers would take control back and lead 58-47 at halftime. Philadelphia would keep on the gas in the early third, going on a 17-7 run to expand the lead to 19. Indiana would score the last 10 points in the third and make it an 8-point game, 79-71 entering the fourth. The Pacers would find their rhythm in the fourth quarter, with a chance to sweep, would lock in and take the lead after a Travis Best layup with 3:48 left. In the last few possessions, Tyronn Hill would make a layup with 42 seconds left to give the Sixers a 91-90 lead. Sam Perkins would miss a 3 on the other end, but the Pacers would get another chance. Jalen Rose would get the shot but miss a close one. Tony Kukoc would get fouled, but go 1 for 2 from the line to give the Pacers another chance, down by 2 at 8 seconds. Travis Best, who hit the shot to win the series in the first round, would get the opportunity to do it again. He missed the first jumper, but got it back and shot a 3, but miss. The Sixers would win Game 4, 92-90, and keep their season alive. It was a rough offensive game from both sides, shooting sub 40% for both. The Sixers would have 6 players scoring double figures, with Iverson leading at 19. Tyronn Hill, who hit the winning layup, had 18 and 15, while McKee and Ratliff had 12, Kukoc 11, and Matt Geiger scored 10. Rick Smith led the Pacers with 20, while Rose and Miller each had 16, and Best scored 11 off the bench. The Sixers would now get at least one more game, going back to Indiana and hoping to win and get to come back to Philly one more time. The Sixers were once down 3-0. Now down 3-1, trying to take it one game at a time to potentially do the impossible. And it would be a lot easier for Game 5, as the Pacers would not have their star. In the third quarter of Game 4, Reggie Miller and Matt Geiger got into an altercation, with Geiger committing his second flagrant foul on Miller, and Miller responding with a punch. The two were ejected, fined, and the final consequences would be Miller being suspended for Game 5, while Geiger would miss Game 5 and Game 6 if there was one. The Sixers would start Game 5 amazingly, scoring the first 15 points of the game. The Pacers would try to settle in, but the Sixers still led 29-16 after the first. The Sixers would dominate in the second as well. While being up 11 early on, they'd go on a 22-8 run to lead 60-37 at halftime. This dominance continued for the remainder of the game, winning 107-86 and forcing a Game 6. Iverson would have a great game, finishing with 37, while Theo Ratliff also had a big game with 26 points and 4 blocks. Aaron McKee had a near triple-double with 13, 10, and 9, and Kukoc scored 13 off the bench, and Hill had 12 and 10. Rick Smith led the Pacers again with 15 points, while Rose and Chris Mullin had 13, Mark Jackson had 12, and Best scored 11 off the bench. Without Miller, the Sixers would dominate, and now they're back in Indiana down 3-2, and look to force a Game 7 to get one step closer to doing the impossible. In Game 6, the Pacers, seemingly feeling some pressure to end this series, would start to use that magic they had in the first few games. After leading 26-22, they went on an 11-3 run to end the first, leading 37-25, as they were led by Reggie Miller, who would return with a vengeance and score 13 in that quarter. The Sixers would not go down that easy, going on a 20-8 run to start the second and tie the game at 45. The rest of the quarter would stay competitive, and the Pacers led 56-53 at halftime. The Pacers would have regained that first quarter energy, going on a 20-12 run to bring the lead back up to 12, and eventually lead by 16 after the third. The Sixers would try in the fourth, but the Pacers would not let up, and after Jalen Rose scored 6 in a row, they would end it, winning 106-90 and win the series 4-2. Miller would lead the Pacers with 25 in his return, while Rose had 21, Smith scored 18, and Mark Jackson finished with 12, 6, and 11. Aaron McKee led the Sixers with 19 points, while Iverson had 18 on just 7 for 20 shooting. George Lynch had 14, Kukoc scored 12 off the bench, and Ratliff and Hill had 11. For the series, Reggie Miller averaged almost 26 points per game on 51, 47, 96 splits. Jalen Rose averaged 22, and Rick Smith averaged 12 points per game. Allen Iverson led the Sixers, averaging 26.5 points per game, while Tyronn Hill averaged 14 and 10, and Aaron McKee and Theo Ratliff both averaged 14 points a game. The Pacers were now in the conference finals for the third straight year and the fifth time in past 7 years, while the Sixers were losing the semis for the second year in a row, but with a bright future ahead, hopefully. Heat versus Knicks. The 2 seed Miami Heat were looking to make their second conference finals appearance in franchise history. To do that, they have to go through the 3rd seed Knicks, who are looking to continue their journey of making it back to the finals. This would be the 4th straight year that these two teams would meet in the playoffs, with the Knicks winning all 3 previous battles. These teams had a history against each other, and now had one more battle to determine who will battle to win the East. In Game 1, the Knicks started off with a 12-6 run as Larry Johnson scored half of those. The Heat would then settle in and go on a 19-7 run to end the first quarter, leading 25-19. The second quarter would be similar to the first, as the Heat held a 6-point lead with 4 minutes left. The Knicks would outscore the Heat 14-9 to end the half, trailing 46-45. Miami would start the third on a 9-2 run to lead by 8 early. The Knicks would take the lead back in the third, as Charlie Ward and Allen Houston would play a great quarter, and after a Bruce Bowen layup, the game was tied at 68 entering the fourth. The fourth would be very competitive, including 9 lead changes and 5 ties. In the final few possessions, Latrell Sprewell would get fouled to make both free throws to tie the game at 83 with 55 seconds left. Alonzo Mourning would come down and make a layup to give them back the lead. Then Allen Houston turned the ball over, which led to another Mourning bucket to seal the game, giving Miami an 87-83 win in Game 1. Alonzo Mourning would lead the Heat, finishing with 26 points, while Jamal Mashburn would have 21. Allen Houston had 21 for the Knicks, while Ewing had 17, Marcus Camby had 11 and 13 off the bench, and Sprewell also scored 11. The Heat led 1-0. Game 2 started very close, with the game being tied at 13 with almost 4 minutes left in the first. The Knicks would then go on a 10-2 run to lead 23-15 after the first. The Knicks would keep it up early in the second as well, taking a 9-point lead. The Heat would bounce back quickly, scoring 9 straight to tie the game back up. The half would end with the Knicks leading 38-34. New York would take control in the third quarter, leading 59-50 after it. The Knicks would step on the gas in the fourth, going on a 13-4 run to take an 18-point lead and end up winning the game 82-76. 6 players were scoring double figures for the Knicks, with Patrick Ewing and Charlie Ward leading both with 13. While Allen Houston and Larry Johnson had 12, Latrell Sprewell had 11, and Marcus Camby scored 10 off the bench in this defense-oriented game. Both teams had bad shooting splits for the game, with the Knicks shooting 35% from the field and 30% from 3, while Miami shot 33% from the field, 31% from 3, and 57% from the line. Jamal Mashburn scored 25 to lead the Heat, while Mourning had 17 and 17 with 4 blocks, and Tim Hardaway had 13. The series was now tied at 1 going to New York. The first quarter of Game 3 was very close, with the Heat leading 25-21 after it. The second would be the same, with the Knicks now leading 37-36. The Knicks would try and take control in the third, going on a 12-6 run to lead by 7. Miami would stay in it, and the Knicks held on to a 56-55 lead going into the fourth. The Heat would take a 3-point lead at one point in the fourth, and just like the rest of the game, it would be super competitive, with the game coming down to the final few possessions. Alonzo Mourning would make 2 free throws to give Miami a 68-66 lead with around a minute left. Allen Houston would miss a shot on the other end, and Marcus Camby missed the putback to give Miami a chance to seal the game. Anthony Carter would get a chance, but missed the shot to give New York one more chance. Houston would get the shot again, but miss, while Camby got the offensive rebound again. Charlie Ward would get a 3-pointer and miss as well, but New York would get it back one more time. Houston would find Patrick Ewing. He would make a shot to finally give New York a bucket and tie the game with 2 seconds left. The ball would be in Mashburn's hands, but he missed the jumper and the game went into overtime. The Knicks would start the OT period on a 7-3 run early to lead by 4 with just over 2 minutes left. The Heat would come back and tie the game after 2 Anthony Carter free throws and a Mourning jumper. In the final minute, Darren Marley would miss a 3, then foul Patrick Ewing on the other end to send him to the line. He missed the first, then made the second to give New York a 1-point lead with 13 seconds left. Anthony Carter would get the shot, converting an amazing floater to give Miami the lead back with 1 second left. The Knicks would inbound, but not get a shot off, and Miami would steal Game 3, 77-76. Mourning would lead Miami with 23 points, while Mashburn scored 16, P.J. Brown had 14 and 12, and the hero Anthony Carter finished with 10, 7, and 8 off the bench. Houston and Sprewell would combine for 47, but it was a struggle for anyone else to contribute. The Heat led 2-1. In Game 4, Miami took a very early 6-0 lead, but the Knicks would tie the game at 17 and go on a 9-4 run to lead 26-21 after the first. The Knicks would take a 9-point lead early in the second, but Miami would keep it close, even taking a lead at one point, but a Chris Childs 3 would give the Knicks a 42-40 halftime lead. Third quarter would start back and forth, with 3 ties and 3 lead changes 4 minutes in. The Knicks would take control and go on an 18-8 run to lead 66-57 after the third. The Heat would try, but every time they seemed to trim the lead small, the Knicks would hit a shot or two to stay in control. Capped off by Charlie Ward scoring the last 8 points for the Knicks. New York won 91-83, tying the series at 2. Ward led the Knicks with 20 points, including 16 in the second half, while Houston had 17, Sprewell had 16, Larry Johnson scored 13, and Patrick Ewing had 12 and 11. Alonzo Mourning had a big game, with 27 points and 14 rebounds, while Dan Marley had 13 and 12 rebounds, Mashburn had 13, and PJ Brown scored 11. Game 5 was going to be a huge game, with the winner taking a huge advantage. The Knicks would start Game 5 leading 16-8 early on, with Latrell Sprewell scoring 8 of those 16. The Heat kept it close, trailing 22-19 at the end of it. Miami would take control in the second quarter. It's led by Mourning, Mashburn, and Clarence Weatherspoon. They would take the lead and were up 41-35 at halftime. The Knicks would fight back, starting the third on a 10-4 run to tie the game. The Heat would then go on a 17-8 run to lead by 9, but the Knicks would score the final 5 points of the quarter, trailing 64-60 entering the fourth. New York would start the fourth on an 8-4 run to tie the game halfway through the quarter. Dan Marley and Jamal Mashburn would go on their own run on a 12-5 one to lead by 7. After Allen Houston hit 2 free throws to cut the lead to 3 with 56 seconds left, Bruce Bowen would hit a three-pointer to seal the game, giving Miami an 87-81 win. Mashburn led Miami with 21 points, while Mourning had 18 with 4 blocks. Garrett Marley, who was a big X factor in this game, scored 16, including 10 in the fourth, and Tim Hardaway had 12. Latrell Sprewell led the Knicks with 24 points, while Ewing had 16 and 11. Houston and Ward both scored 12, and Larry Johnson had 10. Miami now led 3-2, going to New York with a chance to finally beat the Knicks and advance to their second conference finals. Miami would come out with the will to end this series, leading 21-16 after the first. Then they would explode in the second, outscoring New York 24-14 in the quarter to lead 45-30 at halftime. The Knicks, with their backs against the wall, facing elimination at home, would come out with a vengeance in the second half. They start the third on a 13-3 run to cut the lead to 5. They would keep it competitive and trail 58-53 entering the fourth. The fourth quarter started as a slugfest, with the teams combining for 9 points in the first 6 minutes as Miami still led by 4. The Knicks would then go on a 12-8 run to tie the game at 70 with a minute and a half left. In the final few possessions, Anthony Carter would miss a jumper, then Marcus Camby would get a shot blocked by Mourning. Bruce Bowen would then turn the ball over, giving New York another chance to take their first lead since the first quarter. Allen Houston would get fouled by Dan Marley and make both of his free throws to give the Knicks a 72-70 lead with 17 seconds left. The ball would end up in Anthony Carter's hands, the same guy who hit the shot in Game 3 to win the game. He would miss the three-pointer, giving New York the comeback win and forcing a Game 7. Houston would lead the Knicks with 21 points, while Ewing had 15 and 18, and Sprewell also scored 15. Mourning finished with 22 and 10, while Anthony Carter scored 15 off the bench, and Dan Marley had 10, 10, and 7. There will now be a Game 7 in Miami, with the winner getting a chance to play against the first-seeded Pacers. Game 7 started competitive, with Miami leading 12-11 early, until they went on a 13-5 run to lead 25-16 after the first. The Knicks would start the second with a 13-4 run to tie the game up. The rest of the quarter would be back and forth, with 5 lead changes. The Knicks would score the final 9 points of the quarter and lead 45-39 at halftime. Miami started the third on a 14-6 run to take the lead back, up by 2. The rest of the third would stay tight, with the game being tied at 65 entering the fourth. The final quarter of Game 7 would stay very close. Miami would lead by 6 with 4:45 left. Then New York would score the next 8 to take the lead back by 2. In the final minute and a half, Tim Hardaway would make a 3 to give Miami an 82-81 lead. Patrick Ewing would dunk it on the other end to give New York the lead back. Mashburn would miss a close shot, but then steal it back from Chris Childs to give Miami another chance to regain the lead with 26 seconds left. Hardaway would miss a layup, then a jump ball would ensue, give Miami another chance with 12 seconds. Clarence Weatherspoon would get the shot, but miss it. They wouldn't get a chance to foul New York, and the Knicks would win 83-82 to win Game 7 and advance to the conference finals. Sprewell led the Knicks with 24 points, while Ewing had 20 and 10, and Chris Childs scored 15 off the bench. They got away with the win despite their all-star Allen Houston shooting 2 for 10 from the field with 5 points. Alonzo Mourning tried his best, finishing with 29 and 13 with 5 blocks, while Tim Hardaway had 15. Jamal Mashburn would struggle, shooting 3 for 15, finishing with 7 points. For the series, Latrell Sprewell would lead the Knicks with 17 points per game, while Allen Houston averaged 16 points, Patrick Ewing averaged 14 points and 11 rebounds, and Charlie Ward averaged 11 points a game. Alonzo Mourning led Miami, averaging 23 points and 10 rebounds along with over 2.5 blocks, while Jamal Mashburn averaged almost 16. The Knicks would advance to their second conference finals in a row, while Miami has now lost to the Knicks for the 4th straight year, still looking to get back to that conference finals. Lakers versus Suns. The Lakers, coming off a tough 5-game series against the 8 seed, ready to continue their journey, now facing the 5th seed Suns, who now have their star back and are looking to advance to their first conference finals since 1993. Game 1 started tight, with an 18-18 tie at the end of the first. The second started close as well, as the game was tied at 26 almost 4 minutes into the quarter. Then, the Lakers, led by Shaq, would go on a 14-5 run to take a 9-point lead. Phoenix would end the quarter well, cutting the lead down to 46-41 at halftime after Shaquille O'Neal scored 16 in the quarter. The Suns would start the third with the lead down to 6, but then the Lakers would take control, going on a 19-9 run to take a 16-point lead and eventually lead by 15 after the third. They would also start the fourth on an 11-2 run and win game one 105-77. The Lakers defense would dominate, holding the Suns to 36% from the field, 16% from three, and forced 23 turnovers. Shaq and Kobe would have great games, with Shaq having 37 and 14 with 4 blocks, and Kobe had 25 with 3 steals and 3 blocks. Penny Hardaway led the Suns with 25 points, while Clifford Robinson had 13 and Shawn Marion scored 12, while Jason Kidd finished with just 3 points on 1 for 6 shooting and 7 assists. The Lakers lead 1-0 in dominant fashion. The Lakers started game 2 with a 12-4 run led by Bryant. The Suns would respond quickly, outscoring LA 24-12 for the rest of the quarter to lead 26-24. The second quarter would be very close, with the Lakers leading for most of it. Shaq would score 12 of the last 14 points from LA, with them leading 50-44 at halftime. Phoenix would cut the lead down to 5 with 5 minutes left in the third. Then the Lakers would outscore Phoenix 14-10 to lead by 9 going into the fourth. The Suns would start the fourth on an 18-9 run to cut the lead down to 2. After some back and forth, the game was tied at 94 with about a minute left. Kidd would steal the ball from Kobe, then Clifford Robinson would get shot blocked by Glenn Rice, but Hardaway would put it back in to give Phoenix the lead with 46 seconds left. Bryant would get fouled on the next play, but go 1 for 2 from the line to cut the lead to 1. Hardaway would get a shot blocked by Shaq on the next possession, and then Kobe would hit a shot with 2 seconds left to give the Lakers the lead by 1. Hardaway would get one more chance, but once again, get a shot blocked by O'Neal, and the Lakers won game 2, 97-96. Shaq would have another great performance, finishing with 38 points, 20 rebounds, and 5 blocks. Bryant would have 15, Glenn Rice had 13, and Brian Shaw and Robert Horry both scored 12 off the bench. Clifford Robinson and Penny Hardaway combined for 57 for Phoenix, while Kidd had 13, 8, and 6. The Lakers win both games in LA, but what would the Suns bounce back with now heading back to Phoenix? Game 3 started with a 6-6 tie very early on, but Phoenix, trying to do anything they could to not be down 3-0, went on a 22-12 run and finished the first leading 28-18. The Lakers would respond quickly, starting the second on a 14-5 run to take the lead. The rest of the quarter would be very competitive, with the Lakers leading 52-50 at halftime. The Suns would not bow down, starting the third on a 15-4 run to take a 9-point lead. The Lakers would respond immediately, with a 16-7 run to tie the game. The Suns would lead 76-75 entering the fourth. The fourth would be very close, with the Lakers hitting 6 straight free throws, and Hardaway, Rogers, and Robinson would all miss threes, leading the Lakers winning Game 3, 105-99. Shaq would continue his dominance, finishing with 37 points and 17 rebounds, while Bryant scored 25, Robert Horry had 15 off the bench, and Glenn Rice had 10. Hardaway had a great game, finishing with 31 and 8 assists, shooting 11 for 15 from the field, while Clifford Robinson had 23, Rodney Rogers scored 15 off the bench, and Luke Longley had 12. The Lakers now led 3-0, with a chance to clinch their conference finals appearance early. After a 7-7 tie early in Game 4, the Suns would go on a 31-17 run to lead 38-24 after the first. This wouldn't stop in the second, with Phoenix taking full control led by Clifford Robinson scoring 14 in the quarter, and they had a 71-48 lead at halftime. The Suns would continue this the rest of the game, eventually winning 117-98, avoiding the sweep and going back to LA for at least one more game. Cliff Robinson scored 32 points to lead the Suns, while Jason Kidd finished with a 22-10 and 16 triple-double. Rodney Rogers scored 17 off the bench, Penny Hardaway had 16, and Shawn Marion had 12. Shaq and Kobe combined for 47, while Glenn Rice had 15 and Brian Shaw scored 12 off the bench. The Lakers were still 1 win away from advancing. Game 5 started with a 6-6 tie, until the Lakers went on a 15-8 run to lead 21-14 after the first. Then, the breakdown of the Suns happened. The second quarter would be a nightmare. First being on the wrong end of a 12-2 run to start the quarter, and then only scoring 2 points in the final 6 minutes of the first half, finishing with 9 points in the quarter and trailing 49-23 at halftime. Phoenix would, unfortunately, never be able to crawl back, and the Lakers won Game 5 87-65, winning the series 4-1. The Suns would finish Game 5 shooting 28% from the field, while having just one double-figure scorer, who was Todd Day scoring 10 off the bench. Bryant would lead the Lakers with 17 points, while Shaq finished with 15 and 21, and Glenn Rice had 14. For the series, Shaq would dominate, averaging 30 points, 16 rebounds, and over 2.5 blocks. Kobe Bryant averaged 21 points with 2 steals and almost 1.5 blocks, while Glenn Rice averaged almost 12 points a game. Penny Hardaway averaged 21 points with over 5.5 assists, a steal, and a block on 48% shooting to lead the Suns, while Cliff Robinson also averaged 21 points. Rodney Rogers averaged 11, and Jason Kidd finished with 10 points, over 7.5 rebounds, and over 8.5 assists per game. The Lakers would advance to their second conference finals in the past 3 years, while Phoenix was still waiting for their chance to make it back there for 7 years now. Jazz versus Blazers. The second seed Utah Jazz are back in the semifinals, the place they lost last year. They're looking to advance to their 4th conference finals in the past 6 years, while third seed Portland was looking to make their 2nd straight conference finals appearance. 2 hungry teams will be battling it out. Game 1 started out with a 12-12 tie. Then Portland went on an 11-3 run to lead 23-15 after the first. Utah would keep the early second close, being within 2 points, but in the final 3 minutes of the quarter, Portland would go on a 10-4 run to have a 44-34 lead at halftime. The Blazers took a 13-point lead early in the third, but Utah would outscore Portland 25-16 to trim the lead down to 4, 65-61 entering the fourth. But Utah couldn't sustain it, scoring just 6 points in the first half of the fourth, helping Portland open up a double-digit lead, and the final nail being a 21-10 run to end the game, as the Blazers won 94-75. Portland had 6 players scoring double figures, with Steve Smith leading at 20. Damon Stoudemire had 14, Arvydas Sabonis had 13 and 14, and Rasheed Wallace, Scottie Pippen, and Greg Anthony all scored 12. Karl Malone with the Jazz with 22, while Jack Vaughn scored 11 off the bench, and John Stockton had 10. Portland leads 1-0. The Blazers led 24-16 after the first quarter of Game 2, behind Rasheed Wallace's 12 points. They would continue this in the second, going on a 21-8 run to open up a 21-point lead and lead 56-35 at halftime. Utah would try, but not be able to climb back, as Portland won 103-85. Steve Smith led the Blazers again with 19 points, while Bonzi Wells scored 17 off the bench, with 15 coming in the fourth. Rasheed Wallace had 14, Detlef Schrempf and Greg Anthony both had 13, and Sabonis scored 10. Malone had 15 to lead the Jazz, while Brian Russell had 12 and Jack Vaughn scored 10. Portland now leads 2-0, going back to Utah. Steve Smith was set the tone for Portland in Game 3, scoring 14 first quarter points to give them a 30-23 lead entering the second. They would keep it up in the second, going on a 22-9 run to take a 21-point lead. But Utah wouldn't bow down, ending the half on a 17-2 run to trail 55-49 at halftime. They would take that momentum into the third, starting on a 10-4 run to tie the game up. After some close action, Portland would close on a 10-5 run to lead 75-70 entering the fourth. In the fourth, that's where Portland took full control back of this game, starting on a 13-2 run to expand the lead to 16 and eventually end up winning 103-84. Arvydas Sabonis would lead Portland with 22 points on 10 for 13 shooting, while Smith finished with 21. Bonzi Wells had another impactful game with 19 off the bench, and Wallace scored 17. Karl Malone tried his best, finishing with 20 and 11, while Jeff Hornacek had 24 and Brian Russell had 18. Portland was up 3-0, and now one win away from getting the Jazz out of here and doing it with the brooms. Steve Smith would once again start the game hot, scoring 13 in the first, but Utah would lead 31-26 after it this time. The second quarter would be close, with Utah trying but never being able to pull away and holding a 54-49 lead at halftime. This would continue the same in the third, with Utah taking an 11-point lead, but Portland cutting it down 75-69 entering the fourth. Portland would start the fourth on an 11-6 run to cut the lead down to 1, but go back down 7 after Malone and Russell hit some shots for Utah. In the last few possessions, Brian Grant will make 2 free throws for Portland to trail 87-84 with 38 seconds left. Brian Russell will miss a layup on the next play, and Steve Smith will get fouled. Smith will miss the first free throw, but make the second to make it a 2-point game. Portland will foul Armin Gilliam, who missed the first, but made the second free throw to keep Portland in the mix, down 3 with 6 seconds left. The shot will go to Greg Anthony, who missed a 3, and Utah would win 88-85 to avoid the sweep and keep their season alive. Malone will have a great game, finishing with 27, 8, and 7, while Stockton had 18 and 9 assists. Olden Polianice had 12 and 11, and Brian Russell scored 11 but shot 2 for 8. Brian Grant would lead the Blazers with 20 points and 13 rebounds off the bench, while Steve Smith had 19 and Wallace scored 15. Utah now had at least one more game, still down 3-1. Game 5 would be very competitive early, with 3 lead changes and 7 ties that led to Utah having a 21-19 lead at the end of the first. The second would continue the same, with Portland taking a 4-point lead. After that lead, Utah would go on a 16-4 run to lead 41-33 at halftime. The Jazz would try to pull away in the third, leading by 8 at one point, but Portland wouldn't stay in it, eventually tying the game. But with 2 Malone free throws, the Jazz led 63-61 going into the fourth. After some more back and forth play in the fourth, the game would come down to the final possessions. Karl Malone hit a jumper to give Utah a 79-75 lead with 47 seconds left. Rasheed Wallace would come back and make a shot on the other end to cut it back to 2. On the next Utah possession, Stockton would miss a 3, giving Portland a chance. The ball was in Scottie Pippen's hands. Pippen would drain a 3 with 7 seconds left to give Portland a 1-point lead. Utah would get a chance with Brian Russell getting fouled by Detlef Schrempf. He would step to the line, missed the first, and missed the second. Pippen got fouled and went 1 for 2 from the line, leading by 2 with 1 second left. The final possession would be back in the hands of Russell, who tried to redeem himself with a 3, but missed, and Portland won Game 5 81-79 and eliminated the Jazz. Pippen would lead the Portland Trailblazers with 23, 9, and 8, while Sabonis had 16, Wallace had 11, and Steve Smith scored 10. Malone would try his best, finishing with 27, 11, and 6, while Russell scored 18 and Hornacek had 10, but it wouldn't be enough. For the series, Steve Smith led the Blazers with 16 points per game on 56, 50, 83 shooting splits, while Rasheed Wallace averaged almost 14 points with 5 rebounds and 2 blocks. Arvydas Sabonis averaged 13 points and 8 rebounds, and Scottie Pippen averaged 11, 4, and 5 with almost 2 steals. Karl Malone would lead Utah, averaging almost 24 points a game with 8 rebounds and 4 assists, while Brian Russell averaged 12 points and Jeff Hornacek put in 10. Portland was now in the second straight conference finals, while this would end as another failed season in Utah. Pacers versus Knicks. The first seed Pacers and the third seed Knicks would meet in the conference finals for the second year in a row and meet in the playoffs overall for the sixth time in 8 years. There was a huge rivalry and some bad blood between these two, with the Knicks trying to make it back to the finals, while the Pacers were looking to make their first ever NBA finals. This would be a battle. In Game 1, the Pacers would get off to a 9-7 start, but then go on a 26-10 run for the rest of the quarter to lead 35-17 after the first. After leading by 18 early in the second, the Knicks would storm back, going on a 20-6 run to end the half, trailing 52-48. The third quarter would stay close, with the Pacers holding no more than an 8-point lead and leading 78-71 entering the fourth. Indiana would start the fourth on a 12-3 run to lead by 16 and eventually end up winning 102-88. The Pacers would be led by Austin Crocier, who scored 22 points off the bench, including 11 in the fourth. Reggie Miller would have 19 and 7 assists. Jalen Rose had 17, 6 and 6. Rick Smits had 16. Dale Davis finished with 14 and 16, and Mark Jackson had 11 and 13 assists. Latrell Sprewell and Patrick Ewing combined for 43 points, while Allen Houston had 18 and Charlie Ward scored 14. The Pacers lead 1-0. The Knicks got off to a good start in Game 2, starting out 12-4. The Pacers would keep it close, led by Jalen Rose, who tied the game at 22 entering the second. In the second, the game would be very competitive, including 2 lead changes and 5 ties, with New York leading 43-42 at halftime. There would be 4 more lead changes and 3 more ties in the third, with the Knicks leading 66-61. This game would come down to the last few possessions, starting with Miller making a layup to tie the game with just under 2 minutes left. Larry Johnson would miss a 3, but Kurt Thomas would get the offensive rebound and score to give New York the lead back. Rose would score on the next play to retie the game with 55 seconds. Houston would miss a close shot, then Larry Johnson would foul Miller and give him 2 free throws, which he would make to give Indiana the lead. Latrell Sprewell would get the shot for New York next, but missed the shot, where Dave Davis would get the rebound and get fouled. Davis would go to the line. He missed the first and missed the second, but Davis would get his own board and find Jalen Rose, who would dunk it to steal the game, giving Indiana an 88-84 win. Rose would lead the Pacers with 24 points, while Miller scored 19, Rick Smits had 12, and Mark Jackson had 11, 7, and 5, while Dale Davis put in 16 rebounds. Johnson scored 25 to lead the Knicks, while Houston had 15, Chris Child scored 12 off the bench, Kurt Thomas had 10, and Sprewell had 10, but shot just 3 for 14. The Pacers won both games at home, now going to New York looking to make history for themselves. New York would be down 2-0, back at home, hoping to even the series. Unfortunately, they would have to try and do it without their big, Patrick Ewing. Ewing would suffer a foot injury during Game 2 and have to sit out Game 3. The Knicks got off to a solid start in Game 3, with a good end to the first to lead 24-19. The second quarter would be very close, with 3 lead changes, all in the final minute and 4 ties. The Pacers would lead 42-41 at halftime. After the game was tied at 47 early in the third, the Knicks would try to pull away, outscoring Indiana 24-17 for the rest of the quarter to lead 71-64 entering the fourth. They would use this momentum in the fourth, starting on a 10-3 run to lead by 13. And despite Jalen Rose scoring 22 in the fourth, the Pacers wouldn't be able to come back, with the Knicks winning 98-95. Latrell Sprewell and Allen Houston would have great games, with Sprewell having 32 and 8 rebounds and Houston scoring 28, while Larry Johnson and Charlie Ward both had 14. Jalen Rose and Rick Smits would combine for 51 for Indiana, while Miller had 19 and Dale Davis had 10 and 16. New York wins Game 3, and now it's a 2-1 series. After a 5-5 start early in Game 4, the Knicks would take control, going on a 28-14 run to lead 33-19 after the first. Indiana would start the second, scoring the first 8 points to cut the lead to 6, but New York wouldn't let them get closer, as they brought the lead back up to 17 by halftime. The Pacers would slowly chip into the lead as the third went on, trimming it down to 8 by the end of the quarter. They would use this momentum for the fourth as well, starting on an 11-4 run to bring the lead down to 1. After that, the Knicks would score 8 straight points, including 2 Larry Johnson threes to bring the lead back to 9. That gave New York enough of a cushion, and they would win 91-89. Johnson led the Knicks with 25 points, while Houston had 17, Kurt Thomas scored 16 off the bench, Ward had 16, 6, and 7, and Sprewell had 12. Miller led the Pacers with 24, while Rose had 18, Smits had 13, Travis Best scored 12 off the bench, and Dale Davis had 10 and 11. The series was now tied at 2, with a huge Game 5 coming up. The Knicks would get off to a hot start in Game 5, leading 32-17 after the first, led by Patrick Ewing, who returned for this game and scored 9 in the quarter. They would start the second the same, expanding to an 18-point lead early. Then Indiana would storm back. They outscored New York 22-3 for the rest of the quarter, with the Knicks end up scoring just 8 points in the second. After two Travis Best free throws, the Pacers would lead 42-40 at halftime. After an early tie in the third, the Pacers would keep this momentum up, going on an 18-6 run and take a 12-point lead. After a few points at the end of the quarter, the Knicks trailed 65-53 going into the fourth. In the fourth, an unexpected hero return, as Travis Best, the man who hit the shot to send Indiana to the second round, had another huge moment. Best would score 15 points in the fourth quarter, including 11 of the final 15 for Indiana, which pushed them to a win 88-79. Best finished with 24 points, while Rose had 18, Miller had 16, Jackson scored 11 with 7 assists, and Davis had 10. Houston led the Knicks with 25, while Ewing scored 13 in his return, Ward had 11, and Sprewell had 10 on 4 of 14 shooting. The teams were heading into Game 6 back in New York, with a potential finals appearance on the line for the Pacers. The start of Game 6 would be very close, including 7 lead changes and 3 ties in the first 8 minutes of the game. Indiana would outscore the Knicks 7-4 to lead 30-25 after the first, despite Sprewell scoring 11. The Pacers would slowly try to pull away in the second, holding a 50-41 lead at halftime. The Knicks would not back down, starting the third on an 11-2 run to tie the game. After some more back and forth, the game would be tied at 62 entering the fourth quarter. The Pacers, on the clutches of advancing to the finals, kicked it into gear. Led by Reggie Miller, they would go on a 21-9 run to take a 12-point lead with 2 minutes left, and after some free throws, they would win Game 6 93-80 and win the Eastern Conference for the first time ever. Reggie Miller would have a great game for the Pacers, finishing with 34 points, including 17 in the fourth. Rose scored 11 and Best had 10 off the bench. Sprewell tried his best, scoring 32, while Ewing had 18 and 12, and Houston scored 10. For the series, Reggie Miller would average almost 22 points per game on 43% shooting from 3, while Jalen Rose averaged 19, Rick Smith averaged 11, and Travis Best contributed with 10 points on 50% shooting off the bench. Latrell Sprewell led the Knicks for 19 points a game, while Allen Houston averaged 18, Patrick Ewing averaged 14 and 7, Larry Johnson put in 13, and Charlie Ward averaged 10 points and almost 5 rebounds and almost 5 assists. Indiana was moving on to their first NBA Finals appearance ever, while the Knicks' championship journey ended in tough fashion again, and it would be time to make some decisions for their future. Lakers versus Blazers. The Western Conference Finals consisted of the Lakers and Trailblazers, the battle of the two best teams in the league record-wise. Many people thought that the winner of this series would be big favorites to win the finals, and with both teams trying to make it there for the first time since the early 90s, this was going to be an all-out battle for the chance to be named Western Conference champions. The series would start with a bang, as the game would be tied at the end of the first 26-26. In the second, the Lakers would take control, only allowing 6 points in the first 8 minutes of the quarter, exploding onto a 22-point lead and leading at halftime 63-42. Portland would try a triple A slowly in the third, going into the fourth being down 85-72. In the fourth, Portland would cut the lead down to as little as 10, but thanks to Shaquille O'Neal making his free throws, they would never be able to come back, losing 109-94. Shaq would finish with 41 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists, and 5 blocks, putting on an absolutely amazing performance. Glenn Rice would have 15, Kobe had 13, and Robert Horry scored 10 off the bench. The Blazers would have 6 players scoring double figures, led by Scottie Pippen, who finished with 19, 11, and 5, while Bonzi Wells scored 17 off the bench, Steve Smith had 13, Rasheed Wallace and Detlef Schrempf both had 11, and Damon Stoudemire scored 10. The Lakers lead 1-0. In Game 2, the Blazers started off with an 8-0 lead. Then the Lakers would settle in, outscoring them 23-14 to lead by 1 after the first. The second would be very competitive, with 7 lead changes and 4 ties, as the Blazers led 48-45 at halftime. The Lakers would then have a huge meltdown in the third, scoring just 8 points in the quarter, with Portland expanding onto a 23-point lead, and they would eventually dominate, winning 106-77 to tie the series. The Blazers put on an amazing defensive performance, holding LA to 39% shooting from the field, 26% from 3, 53% from the line, won the rebound battle 49-34, and forced 14 turnovers. Portland had 3 players score 20+, with Wallace leading at 29 with 12 boards. Smith had 24, and Pippen put in 21 and 11, while Bonzi Wells scored 12. Shaq led the Lakers with 23 and 12, but he shot 5 for 17 from the free throw line. Bryant also had 12, but shot 2 for 9, and no one else scored in double figures. The series was 1-1 now heading to Portland. The Blazers got off to a hot start in Game 3, starting on a 15-2 run. The Lakers would eventually settle in, with Bryant scoring 14 in the quarter, and they trailed 30-22 at the end of the first. Portland would try to blow the game open in the second, but the Lakers kept it respectable, with the Blazers holding a 55-45 lead at halftime. The Lakers would find their rhythm in the third, going on a 23-12 run to take a 1-point lead, with Shaq leading the way having 13 in the quarter. LA led 72-71 entering the fourth. They would start the fourth with this as well, with an 11-3 start to open up a 9-point lead. Portland would respond immediately, going on a 17-8 run to tie the game with just over a minute left. Robert Horry and Scottie Pippen would both turn the ball over on the next 2 possessions, leading the Lakers to have the ball with 48 seconds left. Bryant would find Ron Harper, who would make a jumper to put LA in the lead. Wallace would get the ball and turn it over to give the Lakers a chance to seal it, but Glenn Rice would give it right back to them with 14 seconds. The ball would end up in Sabonis' hands, who would get the tying shot blocked by Bryant, and the Lakers would win 93-91. Shaq finished with 26 and 12 with 3 blocks, and Bryant would have 25, 7 and 7 and made some huge defensive plays for the duo to lead the victory. Ron Harper also chipped in with 12 points and the game-winning shot. The entire starting five for Portland was scoring double figures, with Wallace Stoudemire leading at 19. Smith had 14, Pippen finished with 12, 9 and 6, and Sabonis scored 11. The Lakers lead 2-1. The Blazers would have an early 17-6 lead in Game 4, trying their best to even the series back up. The Lakers would keep it kind of close, trailing 25-16 after the first. The Lakers would bounce back, starting the second on a 15-2 run and take a 4-point lead. The rest of the quarter would stay competitive, with Portland leading 47-42 at halftime. LA would finally make a nice run, starting the third out 13-5 to take a 3-point lead. They would use this for the rest of the quarter, led by Glenn Rice's 12. They would lead 76-66 entering the fourth. LA would keep their distance in the fourth, despite Rasheed Wallace dominating, scoring 18 in the quarter. No one else could do much else, and the Lakers won 103-91 to take a 3-1 series lead. Shaq led the Lakers with 25 and 11, while Glenn Rice scored 21, and Bryant and Harper each had 18. Wallace tried his best, finishing with 34 points and 13 rebounds, while Smith had 20, Sabonis scored 15, and Pippen had 11 and 10. LA was going to the next game looking to take care of the 59-win team and move on to the finals. The first quarter would start tight for Game 5, with Portland leading 26-24 at the end of it. The Blazers, with their lives in the line, would start the second on a 14-6 run to take a 10-point lead early. The Lakers would stay in the game, but Portland felt comfortable with a 53-45 halftime lead. The Lakers would try and build some momentum, going an 8-4 run to trim the lead to 4. The rest of the third would stay close, but in the final few minutes, the Blazers would go on a 10-2 run to lead 80-67 going into the fourth. Portland would continue this in the fourth, showing great fight in the face of elimination and winning 96-88. Wallace and Pippen were the leaders for Portland, each scoring 22, while Smith had 13 and Sabonis had 12. Shaq had a great game for LA, with 31 points and 21 boards. Bryant would have 17 but shoot 4 for 13, while Harper had 14 and Fisher scored 10 off the bench. The Blazers would get one more game, hoping to maybe force a Game 7. In Game 6, the Lakers started out leading 11-8, then Portland would lock in and outscore LA 18-4 for the rest of the first to lead 26-15. They would also start the second well to take a 15-point lead. LA would keep it respectable, but Portland still led 49-39 at halftime. The Lakers would start the third on a 6-2 run to trim the lead to 4, but the Blazers would keep things at a distance, holding a 71-63 lead going into the fourth. The Lakers would try and go on a run to cut deeper into the lead, but the X factor of this game would be Bonzi Wells. Wells would score 14 points in the fourth to keep the Blazers with a comfortable lead and win the game 103-93. Steve Smith led the Blazers with 26 points, while Wells scored 20 off the bench. Wallace had 18, Stoudemire had 14, and Sabonis put in 10, 11, and 6. Kobe would score 33 for the Lakers along with 6 assists and 4 steals and 3 blocks. Shaq would have 17, 11, and 5, and Rice and Brian Shaw both scored 12. There was now a Game 7 in LA, with the Blazers looking to come back from down 3-1, while the Lakers were looking to finally end this series and avoid an embarrassing meltdown. In Game 7, after the Lakers led 9-6 early, Portland would go on their run, 17-7, to lead 23-16 after the first. They would get to a 10-point lead around halfway through the second, but then the Lakers would make their run, 14-7, to trail 42-39 at halftime. The third would stay very close at the start, with 4 lead changes and 2 ties. After the Lakers had a 1-point lead at the 5:52 mark, the Blazers would go on a 21-7 run for the rest of the quarter and lead 71-58 entering the fourth. After a 4-2 start, Portland would lead by 15. This was at the 10:28 mark in the fourth. Up by 15 in LA, on the verge of reaching the finals and taking out the best team in the league, everything looked perfect. But then, disaster struck. Portland would not score for the next 7.5 minutes, with the Lakers taking advantage and tying the game at 75. A few possessions later, Bryant would make 2 free throws to give LA the lead 81-79 with a minute 34 left. Wallace would get fouled by O'Neal, but missed both free throws, as Bryant would come down and score on the other end to lead by 4. Pippen would miss a 3, and then one of the most iconic moments in NBA history would ensue, as Kobe Bryant would throw a lob to Shaq, who slammed it down. Wallace would make a 3 on the next play to cut the lead to 3, then Ron Harper would get fouled and go 1 for 2 from the line to make the lead 4 again. Steve Smith would miss a layup on the next play, and Bryant would get fouled and miss both free throws to leave the door slightly open for Portland. Smith would get another chance, but miss again, and after some Robert Hoy free throws, the Lakers would complete their comeback and win 89-84 to advance to the finals. Bryant would lead the Lakers in this game, with 25, 11, and 7 along with 4 blocks, while Shaq had 18, 9, and 5, Hoy scored 12, and Rice and Shaw both had 11. Wallace would have another good game, finishing with 30 points, while Smith had 18 and Pippen had 12 and 10. For the series, the Lakers duo would shine, with Shaq averaging 26 points and 12 rebounds and almost 2 blocks per game, while Kobe averaged 20 points, almost 5 rebounds, almost 6 assists, 1.5 steals, and almost 2 blocks. Glenn Rice also averaged 11 points, and Ron Harper averaged 10. The Blazers were led by Rasheed Wallace, who averaged 23 points and 7 rebounds, while Steve Smith averaged 18 and Scottie Pippen averaged 15 points, 9 rebounds, and over 2.5 steals. The Lakers are moving on to their first final since 1991, while this was a tough loss for Portland, being so close but ultimately having to go home in a very hard way. Lakers versus Pacers. The 2000 NBA Finals were set. The number one seeds going to battle. The Lakers, looking to win their first championships in 1998, and the Pacers, looking for their first championship in franchise history. In the first quarter of Game 1, Shaquille O'Neal would establish his dominance early, scoring 15 first quarter points to give the Lakers a 33-18 lead. The Pacers would start the second on an 11-4 run to cut the lead to 6, but the Lakers would punch right back, going on an 11-2 run to expand to a 15-point lead, and they would eventually lead 55-43 at halftime. After leading by 15 again almost halfway through the third, the Pacers would finally find some sort of rhythm, going on a 17-4 run to cut the lead down to 2. The Lakers would score a few points near the end and take a 77-71 lead into the fourth. The Lakers would outscore the Pacers 27-16 in the fourth and win 104-87. Shaq would dominate Game 1, finishing with 43 points and 19 rebounds on 21 for 31 shooting, while Bryant had 14, Harper had 12, and Rick Fox scored 11 off the bench. Mark Jackson led the Pacers with 18 points, where Austin Crochet scored 16 off the bench, and Jalen Rose and Rick Smith both had 12. Reggie Miller would have a very tough finals debut, scoring 7 points while shooting 1 for 16. The Lakers lead 1-0. The start of Game 2 would be very tight, with the game tied at 28 after the first. Things would be the same in the second, with it staying very close and the Lakers leading 52-49 at halftime. The third would be no different, with some more lead changes and ties, and the Lakers led 73-69 entering the fourth. The fourth would be Shaq's time to shine, scoring 17 in the quarter, with most of them being free throws. After Robert Horry and winning free throws and Rick Fox pitching in as well, the Lakers would pull away, winning 111-104. Shaq would have another amazing performance, finishing with 40 points and 24 rebounds while shooting a record 39 free throws and making 18. Harper and Rice both also contributed with 21 each. Jalen Rose would score 30 to lead Indiana, while Crochet had 24 off the bench, and Miller would bounce back with 21, but it wasn't enough. The Lakers now lead 2-0, looking to keep this dominance up on the road. Game 3 would now be an easy one for the Lakers, as they would have to go to battle without their number 2. Kobe Bryant would suffer an ankle injury early in Game 2 that ultimately led him to sit out Game 3, having to navigate and try to put this series out of reach. After an early 8-8 tie in the first, the Pacers would outscore the LA 15-7 to lead 23-15 after the quarter. They would open up a little bit more of a lead, having a 53-42 halftime advantage. The Lakers started the third on a 10-4 run, cutting the lead to 5 and trying to make a comeback. But Indiana would not let that happen, scoring 12 straight points to increase the lead back to 17, and eventually lead 79-66 at the end of the third. The Lakers would make their push in the fourth, going on a 19-10 run to cut the lead to 4. The last few minutes would be very close. Ron Harper made a 3 to cut the lead 94-91 with 15 seconds left. Miller would get fouled and make 2 free throws, and then Harper would turn the ball over in the next play, which would lead to more free throws, and Indiana would win 100-91. Miller would lead Indiana with 33 points, where Rose had 21, Travis Best had 14, and Austin Crochet scored 12. O'Neal would do his best, finishing with 33 and 13, while Harper had 14 with 5 steals, and Derek Fisher and Horry both had 10 off the bench, with Fisher adding 10 assists as well. But it wouldn't be enough without Kobe, and the Pacers were now trying to tie the series in Game 4. Bryant would return for Game 4, with the Lakers now being back to full power. The Pacers would lead 33-23 after the first, trying to take control of the game. The Lakers would start the second on a 13-6 run to cut the lead to 3. The rest of the quarter would stay close, with the Pacers holding a 54-51 lead at halftime. The Lakers started the third with a 10-6 run to take the lead. The rest of the third would be very tight, with 7 lead changes and 3 ties, and the Lakers led 80-77 going into the fourth. The fourth would stay very close, with 10 more lead changes. In the final few possessions, Shaq will go 1 for 2 from the line to give the Lakers a 103-101 lead with about a minute left. Jalen Rose would miss a close shot in the next play. Then Robert Horry would get fouled but go 1 for 2 from the line to hold a 3-point lead. On the next play, Sam Perkins would make a huge 3 to tie the game with 35 seconds left. Horry would turn the ball over in the next play, then Travis Best would miss a shot to give the Lakers a chance to win it with 2 seconds left. Shaq would get the shot, but miss, sending the game to overtime. Overtime would be very close, with LA holding no more than a 4-point lead. In the last 2 possessions, Reggie Miller would make 2 free throws to cut the lead to 116-115 with about a minute left. Kobe would get his shot blocked by Rick Smith in the next play. Glenn Rice would get the offensive board, but miss as well. Then Brian Shaw would sneak in and tip the ball back in to give LA a 3-point lead again. Austin Crochet would get a shot blocked by Bryant, but the Pacers would get the ball back and fouled, leading to Smith making both free throws to make it a 1-point game again. Brian Shaw would try and make another huge shot, but miss. Then, Kobe would come in and get another second chance bucket, giving LA a 120-117 lead with 5 seconds left. On the Pacers' final play, Miller would first get fouled away from the ball, leading him to make a free throw and get the ball back. The real play would put the ball in Miller's hands for a 3. that would miss, giving the Lakers a 120 to 118 win and lead 3-1. Shaq and Kobe have another amazing game together, with Shaq having 36 and 21, while Bryant scored 28 in his return. Robert Horry had 17 off the bench, and Rice scored 11. Reggie Miller also had a great game, scoring 35, while Smith scored 24, Rose had 14, and Sam Perkins, Best, and Crozier all had 10 off the bench. The Lakers are one win away from capturing the final trophy, while Indiana was hoping to make it at least one more game into the season. After an early 9-9 start in Game 5, the Pacers would outscore LA 30-19 to lead 39-21 after the first. Indiana would start the second on a 15-7 run to open up a 19-point lead and lead by that number at halftime 64-45. The rest of the game would stay like this, with the Pacers putting on a great performance with their season on the line, winning 120-87. Jalen Rose led the Pacers with 32, 6, and 5, while Miller had 25, 4, and 6. Crozier scored 13 off the bench, Smits had 12, and Mark Jackson had 10, 6, and 7. Shaq led the Lakers with 35 and 11, while Rice scored 11. Bryant had a very tough game, finishing with 8 points on 4 for 20 shooting. There was now a Game 6, back in LA, with the Lakers trying to win the ring in front of their fans, while Indiana was looking to win again and try to do the same thing Portland did last round. The start of Game 6 would be very tight, including 7 lead changes and 8 ties, with the Pacers leading 26-24 after the first thanks to a Mark Jackson 3 at the end. The Pacers would start the second hot, going on a 21-11 run to take a 12-point lead. The Lakers would keep it close for the rest of the quarter, trailing by just 3, 56-53 at halftime. The Pacers would try and pull away in the third, taking an 8-point lead at one point, but the Lakers would keep it close, trailing 84-79 entering the fourth. The Lakers would make their run in the fourth, going on a 20-8 run to take a 7-point lead, but the Pacers would respond right away with a 9-2 run to tie the game. In the final few possessions, Glenn Rice would make 2 free throws to give LA a 112-109 lead with just over a minute left. Crozier would miss a jumper on the next play, but Bryant would miss one as well to put them in the same position. Miller would miss a 3 that would have tied the game. Then Bryant would get fouled to make 2 free throws to give LA a lead by 5 with 13 seconds. With the final breath for Indiana, Mark Jackson would miss a shot, but Davis would tip it in and make it a 3-point game, but there was only 5 seconds left. Bryant would get fouled and make 2 free throws to seal the game, giving the Lakers a 116-111 win and securing the 2000 NBA championship. Shaq will give one more dominant performance, finishing with 41 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 blocks, while Bryant had 26 and 10, and Rice scored 16. Rose and Miller combined for 54 for the Pacers, while Davis had 20 and 14, Crozier scored 16 off the bench, and Jackson had 10, 8, and 11. For the series, O'Neal would put on a show, averaging 38 points per game with over 16.5 rebounds and almost 3 blocks on 61% shooting. Kobe Bryant averaged 15 points with 4 rebounds and 4 assists, while Glenn Rice averaged 11.5 points and Ron Harper averaged almost 11 points. Reggie Miller led the Pacers, averaging 24 points per game, while Jalen Rose averaged 23. Austin Crozier averaged 15 points with 6 rebounds, and Rick Smits put in 10 points a game. The Lakers were NBA champions for the first time since 1988 and the 12th in franchise history, giving Shaq and Kobe their first championship, putting them on a different level in NBA rankings. Shaq obviously won Finals MVP as well. Meanwhile, Indiana was sent home, still looking for their first championship, and if they couldn't win it then, when would they? And there it is, the 2000 NBA playoffs, a deep dive. A very, very long video, trying to go in depth and really give the full context and everything going on in the 2000 NBA season. But that's going to be it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I put a lot of effort and time into this, so if you do appreciate it, I really enjoyed a lot. And if you want to see more of this, you want to see 2001 and maybe make this a series, let me know down in the comments below. Once again, if you do like the content around here, consider subscribing, like, turn on notifications, do all stuff like that. I really appreciate it, really upset a lot. Share this video and do all that stuff to make other people see it, because I am really proud of this video and I really appreciate it if you guys comment, like, and do all the stuff like that. And yeah, I'll see you guys later.